All right, everybody, we're about to be reviewing a debate that I have been wanting to watch for a couple days now. I've been longing to watch this, and I've deliberately kept myself from doing so because I knew you guys wanted to see my completely raw, first-time, unfiltered reaction to it. Ethan Klein of the H3H3 podcast, of the H3H3 YouTube channel, recently had a debate with Ollie London, the ex-trans Korean TikTok, or not TikTok, BTS Jimin stalker, who has now turned into a conservative grifter who has written a memoir about detransitioning. And the funny thing is, the memoir used to be called, like, Detransition, an Ollie London memoir, and then Ollie London renamed it into, like detransition, a taking down the gender ideology, like as like a 4-line subtitle. It's like a collection of like 90% nothing but conservative anti-trans buzzwords. And it's like, okay, so I see what you're doing now, Ollie London. The guy's a real, like, ghoul. There's really no other way to describe this person. However, here's the thing. When I hear that Ethan Klein is going to debate somebody on the right who is like a marginally seasoned media figure in regards to pushing conservative propaganda, I will admit I got a little nervous. I was like, ooh. I mean, Ethan Klein, as far as I know, is no debater. I mean, he's not, like, stupid. I don't think he's incompetent in regards to explaining his positions or defending what he believes in. But debate, in the internet sense, isn't that. Debate in the internet sense, 99% of the time, is not a matter of, like, being able to defend your ideas in an honest and coherent way. It's a mind game of out-rhetoric crafting your opponent. Your opponent, assuming you're a lefty and they're a conservative in this case, your opponent is bringing every dishonest, like, method and tactic and dialogue tree that they have to the table. They're going to use everything that they've heard from their favorite content creators. If they are themselves a pundit, they will basically go through a list of things that they have already covered due to the fact that their career is based around pushing this narrative, and they twist every story into conservative propaganda for their shows. And it can be difficult. It can be really difficult with these people sometimes to be prepared and equipped enough to deal with their propaganda, because it literally just might be a matter of them having a million different anecdotes they can throw at you at high velocity, and you just can't strike them down fast enough. And apparently, I haven't seen the debate yet, but apparently Ethan Klein came really prepared to this debate. Despite, as far as I know, never really debating anybody. I mean, the closest I know he's gotten to doing, like, a full-on debate, in my knowledge. No, actually, he's done a couple debates recently, and he did pretty well, based on what I saw. There were clips on YouTube Shorts, so I will amend that. I've seen Ethan Klein blowing people the fuck out on YouTube Shorts lately. Clips for when he's bringing people onto his podcast that don't like him, usually for political reasons, and he blows them the fuck out. So I've seen a few clips of that. But my understanding is he came very prepared, very well researched, and was on top of, like, everything. Like, apparently he just decisively blew Ollie London the fuck out. I haven't seen it yet. I've heard, like, people talking about it, and I've heard, like, people's referring to what happens, but I don't know much, and I'm really excited to watch, because it's been 5 fucking days of agonizing waiting, wanting to watch this debate. So honestly, without any further ado, let's get into it. Oh, before I say anything, despite the fact that Ethan Klein seems to have decimated Ollie London in this, don't expect this to result in very much positive response outside of the left towards Ethan Klein. Something that I've noticed is when it comes to popular content creators, especially those that blew up back during, like, the 2014 to 2017 era, who really got big on edgy type content, if they ever leave that genre and God forbid ever speak out with progressive values, they will be hated for whatever set of reasons that can be dreamed up to hate that specific figure that are not overtly political. They will decide this figure does not deserve respect anymore. And obviously, iDubbbz is a good example of this, but Ethan Klein is also another good example of this. These figures were seen as like colossi of their times, and now they're basically treated like lolcows, despite being very relatively normal, well-adjusted people as far as content creators go. Literally, all these people did wrong. If you really track it back to the beginning of where these hate waves come from, is they started to adopt more progressive values as they got older. That's really where it tends to start. And I've always felt bad for Ethan Klein for those reasons. You know, I don't think he's a bad guy. I see a lot of people, particularly in the drama community, like Bo Blacks, Augie, that sphere, really hate Ethan Klein. But, like, I've yet to hear a very good reason why. It's usually, like, the same line of reasoning as why you should hate iDubbbz now. It's like, oh, well, they suck now. They're just insufferable now. And it's like, well, why are they insufferable now? Well, because they cancel people and they're super judgmental and they're super like preachy and they're on a high horse now. It's like, okay, well, give me some examples of that. And it's like, okay, well, here's a clip of iDubbbz talking about his old fans who he says he hates now. And it's a clip where he talks about how his fans, back when he would do his old type of content, would meet him in public and then they would yell slurs loudly when they saw him because they thought that's what like he found funny and like what he wanted them to do. And he realized that's not the kind of thing he wants to encourage in his audience of, to be fair, quite young, impressionable people who looked up to him. As Diesel Patches said, we covered a Diesel Patches video dunking on iDubbbz recently. He closed it out with a straight face, unironically saying, without a hint of irony or sarcasm, R.I.P. to my surrogate internet dad, in regard, like referring to iDubbbz and how he's fallen off. These people literally view, a lot of these people grew up watching so much YouTube that they view their favorite YouTubers from back in the day literally akin to parental figures with the level of parasocial relationship they've built over the course of years and years and years. And now that these figures have, in their mind, turned on them, it's led to a deep feeling of betrayal. And that's where I think a lot of the hate for Ethan Klein and iDubbbz comes from. And, you know, it's sad to see, but despite that, I'm happy to see that Ethan Klein is still out there kicking ass and taking names by the looks of things. I'm excited to see how this goes. But as I mentioned before, the only, like, big time, like, you know, a lot of people saw it, debate performance, quote unquote, that Ethan Klein has had, as far as I know, was the Steven Crowder debate, in which he brought in Sam Cedar, and Steven Crowder left out of fear. And in that clip, Ethan Klein says he's not much of a debater. So I'm curious to see how much his skills have improved, because people have really, really talked him up here. Anyway, once again, without any more further ado, let's start. Oh, I am going to turn the speed up a little bit because, admittedly, this is going to be fairly long.
We should mute chat for this segment, probably, as we do during interviews.
Hi, Ethan. How's it going?
Hello, Ollie. Nice to meet you and sit and chat with you.
Nice to see you. I like your outfit. Very French with the hat.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think you look wonderful.
All right. Right off the bat, I have to say something.
I'll meet you and sit and chat with you.
I have to say something right off the bat, okay? Ollie London very evidently has not changed his style or aesthetic from that which he actively demonizes with his propaganda. It is very clear that internally, Ollie London likes this aesthetic, the whole, like, very much not conservative, dressing, K-pop inspired, like, this type of clothing, right? This type of presentation is clearly what Ollie London prefers. But when you look at Ollie London's Twitter and other, like, conservative engagements, they do not appear like this. Because Ollie London knows that if the vast majority of conservative followers that follow them saw what Ollie London looks like, it would be over. He has a very short lifespan as a creator in this sphere, as a propagandist in this sphere. Within a year, you are not going to be hearing or seeing anything about Ollie London in regards to conservative politics. He's just Like, the second a conservative sees the way that Ollie London still dresses and presents themselves, it's going to fall apart. They're not going to follow Ollie London anymore. Like, you literally don't even have to look that hard to see that this is all a grift. Outside of just, like, Twitter retweets and likes and follows occasionally, that is all the, like, influence that Ollie London has. Past that point, it's going to fall off very quickly. I don't think the novelty of someone like this is going to stay very long. I think Ollie London has an extremely short lifespan as a creator, as most detransitioner activists tend to be, right? Like, oh, I was trans and now I'm detransitioning for reasons, but also maybe not detransitioning in some cases. But I'm going to use my platform to spread scientifically incorrect misinformation about trans people from the perspective of a detransitioner and use that as sort of my lens of credibility. It's very, very demonic, but at the end of the day, while it may result in a somewhat profitable grift for a short period of time, it is a very short period of time. Like, at the end of the day, anyone who was ever once trans in the eyes of a conservative is, like, permanently scarred as, like, a sinning, degenerate, like, weirdo, right? Like, you've seen the way that conservatives talk about trans people, like trans adults. If you think that they believe that if you just stopped being trans and became cis again, they'd be okay with you after having that knowledge you were once trans, no. That is a permanent mark on you, like, that you ever once were trans in their eyes permanently marks you as a degenerate. So really, it's a matter of Ollie London just sort of, like, lasting for as long as the right sees them as useful.
Nice to see. I like your outfit. Very French with the hat.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think you look wonderful too. We're kind of doing the same thing with our hats, aren't we?
Wasn't planned, but yeah.
Let me see your profile. Turn to the side. Let me see how it's looking.
Oh, I've actually quit surgery.
No. I mean the beanie. I'm not commenting on your surgery.
Oh, sorry.
I want to see how
my
the
face
beanie's sitting, you know?
Yeah, no, it's very cool. How's your day so far?
So we're just getting...
I don't want to be rude about it, because there are a lot of botched cosmetic surgeries out there. Like, a lot of people who've gotten botched cosmetic surgeries that, like, I don't feel like deserve to get shit on for it. But God, Ollie London is just the most demonic human being. Not the most, but one of the most demonic human beings we've covered on this show. So it is very hard for me not to comment on the fact that this person who's literally admitted they've gotten penis reduction surgery so that they can feel more Korean. Like, it is very hard not to attack any of the physical features that Ollie London now possesses post trans Korean surgeries. Who remembers the Dr. Phil episode? Where, like, everybody's like, you need to stop doing this, and Ollie London's like, no, this is for me, this is to make me happy. And now Ollie London is saying they were pushed into this by the trans agenda and like, the woke mob.
I want to see how the beanie's sitting, you know?
Yeah, no, it's very cool. How's your day so far?
So we're just getting set up here a little bit. So tell me, when was your last surgery? I'm curious.
So I actually quit surgery. Well, my last surgery was last April, but I've completely quit, and I'm never going to do surgery again. I had, recently I had a non-surgical facelift, but it's no surgery, it's Fred's, because,
Didn't Ollie London say that they had, like, a bunch of medical complications in their last surgery or two, and that's what made them have to stop, like, transitioning into Korean? Like, I'm pretty certain this has nothing to do with, like, the trans Korean thing even, like, wearing off as, like, a bit that people were, like, paying attention to online. And them having to do that or do this is like a pivot for attention because, like, the trans Korean thing just wasn't doing it anymore. I'm pretty sure it got to the point that Ollie London was literally killing themselves with the cosmetic surgeries, and they like literally have to stop. Like, they can't continue, or they will probably die or have severe medical complications if they continue, particularly with, like, the anesthesia or something, I think it was. So now, with literally no option to continue down the trans Korean route like they wanted to, there's really no other option than, like, okay, let's reel it back. I'm essentially detransitioning if you really think about it, right? So let's push this narrative.
You can do the same thing these days without the actual surgery, and I was getting to a point, Ethan, where I would have probably died because I'd probably gone under anesthetic 3 times every year. I was going under anesthetic, so it was like I could have died.
Yeah. The 30 surgeries, the anesthetic. There you go. For those that don't know, being put under for surgery is one of like, if you get your wisdom teeth like taken out, the most dangerous part of that surgery will be getting put under with anesthetic if they choose to do that. Like, the vast majority of procedures you're likely to get, the most dangerous part is them putting you under with anesthetic, because unironically, we don't fully understand how full anesthetics work. And we just know that they do. And there are cases where people just don't wake up. Very rare, but it happens. And it's kind of scary when you think about it. It's a little scary. So just constantly, like every time you get put under for a procedure, regardless of how non-invasive said procedure is, you're literally rolling the dice in your life that you might never wake up again, regardless of how non-invasive and simple the surgery is.
I read somewhere that you spent $300,000 on plastic surgery. I've always wondered, like, where do you get? That's a lot of money. Where'd you get that money?
Fuck.
Well, actually, I used to before I started doing, social media.
I don't think I've even made $300,000 combined in my entire life.
During K-pop and stuff, it was a successful personal shopper, so I had my own personal shopping business in London. So I used to dress like really, like very wealthy ladies, celebrities.
Okay, like a stylist,
members of the royal family. So I was dressing them in like Gucci and Tom Ford and stuff, and you get a very high commission for that. So basically, I did all that, spent a lot of the money on the surgery.
So okay, I imagine that a lot of people watching this live or for the first time, including, like, not really including myself, because I'm a streamer, I do debates like this, might have been thinking, like, why is Ethan Klein being so nice to this fucking ghoul? And the reason for that, no doubt, is when you do a debate with a public figure, no matter how much of a fucking virulent piece of shit they are, regardless of how many, like, degrading, like, dehumanizing things you said about them publicly, it is still expected that you keep some level of decorum at the start of your conversation person to person. Should it, like, devolve into a screaming match of insults and ad hominem later on, that's fine. But you can't be the one to instigate that, and you can't be, like, you have to start off somewhere a little more neutral and chill. Get them comfortable, disarm them, and get their guard down. That's when you can get them into some traps. That's when you can get them in gotchas. And I feel like that's what Ethan is doing now. You can't just start off by calling this person a piece of shit. He's gotta get them a little bit more loosened up.
And now I've got like a PR company basically helping influencers get publicity and help them get placements in like television and advertisements and stuff like that, and getting the brand deals. And of course I do my own social media, and I've got.
All right. So I've talked a lot lately about conservative dark money and how the left basically relies entirely on grassroots funding from, like, for example, me getting donos from you guys while I live stream. That's literally what allows me to pay my bills, buy groceries, keep the lights on, and continue to do this for a living. If you guys stop donating and stop watching my content, I have to go flip burgers at McDonald's. The vast majority of conservative pundits that you know the name of, if they fell off the face of the earth tomorrow, they have enough money in their pocket that they never have to work again. And they would live a very comfortable life while never working again. Because that is the level of money in a very short amount of time compared to, like, even like a multi-year long hard-working, like, lefty streamer that these conservatives make. They are making an insane amount of money, and they are getting paid said money from very shady areas. There was a tweet or a TikTok in the form of a tweet that Chris Raygun put out, and it got him a lot of hate. It got him a lot of hate for putting this out. Yep, here it is. I found it on TikTok. Nice. So it's mostly like a meme TikTok. Like, this is mostly like done as like a meme joke, but what he's talking about, the story he's telling in it, is true. And I believe it 100%. And I want you to imagine how many other figures that you know of got astroturfed into prominence through the means and at least one of the organizations or another organization, not even the same one, that he refers to here.
Now, this is the story all about how several years back I got an email from some shady people with a lot of power who said you can make a ton of money towing the conservative party line and we'll make sure that happens for you. And I said, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be beholden to any fucking body but me. And I refused that offer, and the years went by, and it's become very fucking clear who the people were who just did not refuse that money. And it's fucking actually wildly obvious, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, he got a lot of shit for that tweet. Or for that TikTok, like, unironically, there were a bunch of conservatives who were shitting on him. Like, no, prove it, receipts, prove it. It's like, why are you conservative viewers of Chris Ray Gun acting hostilely to him, talking about how a conservative dark money organization reached out to him, asking or offering him a shit ton of money to push like right wing politics? It's like they're hostile to the idea of there being malicious, like, large amounts of money being paid to push their ideas on the right. Like, even if that was the case, it wouldn't necessarily negate the trueness of anything that was being said by them. Like, if what conservatives believed was true, the fact there's a bunch of money being paid to people to push those ideas wouldn't be a problem. It's the fact that it's all misinformation that has no ground to stand on without massive amounts of money backing it to push out to people through, like, very skilled rhetoricians. That's the problem. Like, conservatism as an ideology is very unappealing. It requires very well-paid and or indoctrinated mouthpieces to wrap it in a presentation that is appealing to people. Because if you give cold, raw conservatism, if you present that to a person, to the vast majority of people, they will turn that down and run away the vast majority of the time. Because conservatism at its core is just not an appealing ideology. That's why these figures have to lie and misrepresent and, sort of present it dishonestly in order to get people on board.
Got a book as well coming out this year.
Right, we'll talk about that. But did you say you dressed members of the royal family?
Not the British royal family. So I'd actually met with Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, and she shot with me. She bought some
You hung with the Queen?
for me.
Damn.
Yeah, no, but I met loads of people. I met, the Prime Minister of Thailand, the ex-Prime Minister. I used to shop with his wives and girlfriends.
Wow. Must have been hard to leave that behind.
I am very curious how much of this is true and how much is not. Because I feel like it's plausible. Like, I feel like a lot of this is plausible, but I also feel like it's not disprovable. Like, if there is no, like, he can just say, oh, no one took pictures if there's no evidence of it, right? I got my Soros check. Where's yours? God, I long for one.
Because, you moved to South Korea, and we're all familiar with that whole journey. That must have been hard to leave all that behind you if you were doing so well.
Actually, that was before. So when I lived in Korea as an English teacher, that was actually before. So it was basically, I was younger. I wanted an experience abroad. Went to do.
Can you imagine Ollie London being, like, your teacher? I hope, like, English teacher for adults and not, like, English teacher for kids. That's nightmarish.
And teaching in Korea, and then after I got back to London, I started, like, getting into fashion. I had some friends doing fashion, and then over a couple of years, I worked my way up from a stylist to a personal shopper, and kind of did that for about 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk, Ollie, about. Well, first of all, thank you for coming on. I understand you're promoting a book entitled Gender Madness, which comes out August.
Okay. Yeah, so the original title of the memoir book was Detransition, a Memoir. Now the name of the book is Gender Madness, and then, like, 4 lines of subtitles that are all conservative anti-trans buzzwords. Like, it's the most blatant grift I've ever seen. I hope Ethan brings that up.
First, so congratulations. This is your first book. Very exciting. Gender Madness. Also, you wanted to announce that you're the new spokesperson for Fairness First PAC, Caitlyn Jenner's organization, who famously ran someone over. But that's actually not the most important thing about Caitlyn Jenner.
So basically, I've got a new book coming out. Basically,
wait, I like the little troll. I like that because even, like, outside of the left, Caitlyn Jenner is not well liked. Even in normie spheres, Caitlyn Jenner is not well liked. Because even though she's conservative, she's trans, and 2, she, like, it's a meme. It's, like, a pretty popular, like, edgy meme to, like, shit on her for having run someone over with a car. And so just dropping that in there is basically an unambiguous optical win for Ethan Klein. It doesn't look bad to anybody. It there's no way to respond to it. And it literally just forces Ollie London to acknowledge association with Caitlyn Jenner.
a lot of people have, obviously followed my journey over the years, and obviously I struggled a lot with identity, and I had some very unhealthy behavior.
Yep, just dropped it there, and like gotta move the topic away from that. Just let Ethan have that dub.
Is basically due to my addiction to surgery, my body dysmorphia, which later turned into gender dysphoria. So I really struggled with that, and it was unhealthy. And I completely accept my past.
Bro, these people here. My favorite thing is when conservatives were so, like, they've recently had to, like, at the very least brush up on some of the actual terminology in regards to, like, the science and the psychology research behind trans people. So they're not like back in the day, you would get into a debate with your average conservative, like, transphobe type, and they would say body dysmorphia or gender dysmorphia instead of gender dysphoria. They would out how little they know about the topic and how stupid they are and how much they're just pushing an agenda by the fact that they can't even correctly refer to, like, basic things like gender dysphoria. They'd say gender dysmorphia, and they'd multiple times say it. It'd be clear they're not misspeaking. They think that's what it is because that is how low level their education on the topic is. Now right-wing demagogues have, like, brushed up a little bit. They've modernized their transphobia, and you can't catch them off guard as easily as you could back then. But they always fall behind.
I don't try to deny the person I was, and I had some kind of bizarre behaviors, basically in an attempt to feel validated and to try and feel loved, because I really resented.
So I want to get into all those things.
Okay,
I'm really interested in your journey from you identified as a trans woman, right, and then you kind of found God and pivoted to becoming a white British Christian man. Do I have the synopsis correct?
Yeah, it sounds complicated, but yes, so I'm back to being myself now and, like, found happiness.
My neck.
So I just want to get a few things straight. So do you still identify as gay?
Yes, so I'm still gay, but I have dated girls before, and still.
You're bisexual.
Oh, I guarantee you will not see any reference to Ollie London still being gay, I guess, on any of his tweets or social media. Woo! Oh, God. We should just clip out this clip of Ollie London saying, and, like, add a timestamp of when this was, like, admitting that they're gay, and just attach that to the bottom of every Ollie London tweet. Like, Ollie London would lose hundreds of thousands of followers. Xander Hall, his ex-girlfriend, is a super bimbo-pilled French porn star. Based for being his ex and not current.
I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. And you don't identify as Korean anymore.
No,
obviously.
correct.
And then also, are you pro gay rights?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm part of the LGBT community. I support people. My issue is just what's happening to children and also the erosion of women's rights.
You can really see, like, how poorly this narrative and this, like, type of grift is going to hold up long term by the fact that like, Ollie London is trying to take this sort of pseudo 2016 Gamergate centrist like liberal or like classical liberal centrist position. The idea that, like, oh no, I'm all cool with gay people and all that, and I believe in gay rights. It's just that trans people, like, and I'm sure there's some valid trans people, just the vast majority of them are going too far and pushing their ideas, and everybody. It's like the Jordan Peterson 2016 like tier argument.
But I fully support people as an adult making an informed decision to change themselves, but I don't support children being medically transitioned.
So you do support trans people in general?
So absolutely. So I support, people as an adult making a decision if they want to change and they're happy with that. But I feel that unfortunately the trans movement has been hijacked by a small but growing group of trans activists, which are basically pushing kind of an erosion of women's rights. So that's what I really take an issue with. There's a lot of trans people, I have a lot of trans friends.
All right, so we're taking the turf position here. We're arguing that validation of trans women is an impediment on women, like cis women's rights, right? This idea is, of course, bullshit, like down to the most fundamental level. Even if you want to get onto like the bathroom issue, like, oh, what about like bathrooms and locker rooms and stuff like that, and changing rooms where it's like, a very private space for cis women that don't want to be seen by males who might, have impulses and urges in that space. And it's like, okay, so for starters, if we actually look at the data and the statistics, trans women are more likely to be the victim of sexual assault or violence or battery or any type of crime like that in a women's bathroom than a cis woman. I believe trans women are actually in more danger going into, like statistically going into cis women's bathrooms than cis women would be going into a cis men's bathroom, right? Or like a men's bathroom, right? Like the rate of violent, particularly sexual violent crime on trans people far, far disproportionately outweighs that of cis women. This is just overtly true. It is unapologetically true. It is a tragedy that it's true, and that is why I say unapologetically true. This idea that trans women in particular are some sort of, predator group that is pushing itself into like cis women's spaces, beyond retarded. Beyond retarded. The data would actually argue that trans women are in more danger of being violated by cis women than the other way around.
I know what it's like to be trans, that really just want to live their lives, and they're actually having a tough time now because of these trans activists. So my issue is with trans activists and not actual trans people.
Okay, so you say, here's a tweet of yours from just the end of last month, not that long ago, right? Or no, yeah, it's like from 5 days ago. You say, the goal of the trans movement is not simply to exist. The goal is to erase women, mutilate children, sexualize kids, take away free speech, class pedophilia as an identity, remove parental rights. And
every single tweet Ollie London puts out is just like, what can I tweet at this very moment to maximize the amount of likes? Let me tweet something like really transphobic. That'll get a lot of likes. Let me quote tweet this story with the most transphobic thing possible. Like, they will go on a show and say a bunch of shit that's like really reasonable and like less radical while tweeting shit like this, because it's literally just getting by day, maximizing the amount of people giving positive engagement to their content. And pushing their face to more people, getting more money, getting more publicity.
Indoctrinate kids, violence to obtain, and they're willing to do violence to obtain their goals. So when you say the trans movement, it seems to me that you are speaking generally about trans people having this goal. And when you say trans movement, I don't know exactly what you mean, because it seems that most trans people, or that I've seen, maybe with the exception of Caitlyn Jenner, it seems to disagree with this, seems to identify as being parts of the trans movement. So what is the difference between, what is the trans movement? Who is a member of that? What is this organization?
So what I'm talking about here is the trans movement in the trans activist movement. So the people pushing these ideologies. So we see every single day, just yesterday, the Texas state capitol.
What they mean by trans activist is any trans person who believes in trans rights and in any way speaks in favor of them, or does anything that would like indicate they're in favor of them, right? Like, you're a trans activist if you like put out a line of clothes that has protect trans kids on it, right? That makes you a trans activist. Essentially, this definition of applies to any trans person that disagrees with the rights propaganda about trans people. It's just like a pejorative term. It's just an insult. It's not an actual like identity or like ideology or group of people.
Was invaded there. Trans protesters went there. We see women being attacked at women's rights rallies, physically attacked, and we're seeing this trans activist movement pushing for gender affirming care on kids, which is basically putting 11, 12-year-old kids on very harmful hormones. So that's what I'm talking about. When I talk, I'm not generalizing every single trans person. I'm talking about.
Interesting. He said hormones here. I wonder how he'll feel when hormone blockers inevitably get brought up in this discussion, because in one-on-one debates, conservatives rally against hormones being given to kids. But in their public-facing messaging, where they're not being challenged actively live, like in a debate format, they talk about how hormone blockers are also evil. And the reason why they do this is because hormone blockers are scary sounding, and, it sounds really spooky and scary. And honestly, a lot of transphobes don't even know the difference between hormone blockers and hormones themselves. So basically, like, you can just sort of fearmonger without worry of like any type of reprisal on your big public platform, like on Twitter, like Ollie London does. But in a one-on-one debate, someone might actually bring up the fact that hormone blockers are largely reversible and are literally the solution to the hysteria that conservatives have drummed up about potential false alarms about gender dysphoria diagnoses. They're actively trying to fight the cure to the problem that they've overblown out of proportion because they can't allow that to be the option, right? Hormone blockers being the option, which it is the answer to the thing they're complaining about. That being the answer means trans people still get to exist and still get to have rights. That can't be allowed. They have to somehow find a way to indicate completely unscientifically that hormone blockers as well are actually some kind of irreversible, extremely radical thing to do for a kid. By the way, kids have been taking hormone blockers, and I mean cis kids, non-trans kids, have been taking hormone blockers for decades upon decades for a variety of medical reasons, because they are medications that have been used to treat kids for a long time. There's like nothing about hormone blockers that necessarily harms kids. All medications have side effects, but hormone blockers are certainly on the lower end of like the harmful side effect spectrum in regards to medication.
About the current trans movement, which has been hijacked by trans activists. And I really think that trans people that have been living as a trans person their whole life, they need to speak out against this, because the problem is that the LGBT community is being hijacked by these radical
let
people.
me ask, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to address things you said already, right? So you say that the people who were demonstrating at the Texas Capitol are part of this trans movement who wants to, sexualize kids and this whole list of things. They were there to protest a bill, SB 14, that would ban gender-related treatment for minors. So these guys are, I guess, see that as an affront, as being transphobic. But you disagree.
I like how neutrally Ethan Klein is acting right now. We know Ethan Klein's actual position. We know that he's actually pro-trans. We've seen his podcast with Hassan. We know that what positions Ethan Klein holds. And yet still, most likely because he's counting on the fact that Ollie London would have likely a very limited understanding of who Ethan Klein is, he's acting very impartial, unbiased, and just reasonable, Not like he has any hardcore set positions that he's arguing for, more so that he is curious about what Ollie London believes and is nitpicking, not nitpicking, but taking issue with blatant problems in what Ollie London believes and says that they believe. It's a very good way to go about this debate, especially with someone like Ollie London, who kind of relies on, in many cases, playing the sympathy card as like this victim of the trans agenda. Like if like Ethan Klein just went hard here, it would have looked like, oh, the trans community attacking detransitioners because they destroy the narrative or whatever.
Because what is minor? Anyone 17 and under? Do you believe that ever there would be a 17-year-old that needed gender-affirming care?
So minors basically classified anyone under 18, and what these people were protesting against was the fact that Texas is trying to pass a law to ban hormones and puberty blockers and gender reassignment surgery being administered to.
Imagine thinking a 17-year-old is too young to know what gender they are, dude. Like, holy fucking shit. I get having some reservations about, like, very young kids who probably don't have the strongest grasp on gender, like, potentially, like, misconstruing a preference for things that are typically, marketed towards girls as, like, a sign of gender dysphoria. Like, I get that concern. I understand it. But the right has basically taken that and turned it into just the most hysterical fear, right? Hormone blockers are the solution to that problem. If you've got a kid who for a long period of time seems to be like, below 10, like 8 years old, in that area, like getting towards puberty, about to start it, who thinks they might be trans and has for a while, but you're not 100% sure and doctors aren't 100% sure, hormone blockers are what you put the kid on so they don't go through puberty right away. So if they actually are trans, it's easier for them to transition. The vast majority of medical data suggests that in the vast majority of cases, if that kid, say at 18 years old, realized they're not trans and got off of hormone blockers, it would be reversible. Their puberty would set in late. They'd be quite the late bloomer, but their puberty would set in, their natural puberty, and they would, for the most part, they would be where they were without hormone blockers. There would be some level of, like, appearance changes. Like, obviously, there's, like, there would be, like, you would probably be more masculine had you never had hormone blockers as a kid than if you did. Obviously, like, I'd imagine there'd be some level of effect, but most of the data suggests it's very small, if any effect, and reversible. So
children, basically. So, I think these people, firstly, that was an unlawful protest. You can't just go into state capitol and do that. And if they want to have
are you in favor of only lawful protests?
well, I think, people need to follow the law. And if they want to have a protest, they can have that dialogue. But outside the state house, you can't just storm in a state house. I mean, it's comparable to January 6th when people...
I will not let a British person tell me their opinion on protesting, okay? I'm sorry. If you're not American, your opinion on protesting doesn't matter.
People stormed the Capitol, which was...
You don't have the right to protest. Not really. America has the right to protest country there is.
Unlawful as well. So I think, these people were not protesting about their rights being taken away. It's the fact that they were protesting against a bill that would have actually protected children. So I think that's really harmful.
Some might say that it's actually harming kids, right, to make it illegal to do this.
The French come in a close second. I'll give you that. The French come in a close second because they don't give a fuck about the law. They go goblin mode when it's time to protest. They riot. They have revolutions. They go full goblin mode. So I can respect that.
Because as you probably know, or I think you did at one point, is that gender-affirming care on children is exceedingly rare. It's actually so rare that it's...
This is the same gotcha that Joe Rogan got Matt Walsh on, funnily enough. I know we don't really think of Joe Rogan as the kind of guy who typically pushes back against the conservative ideologues he'll typically platform, but he actually did. He actually fact-checked something Matt Walsh said, and yeah, here's a YouTube short from the Young Turks. Fuck the Young Turks, but still, good clip.
Talking about hormone blockers.
Yeah.
Millions of kids have been on hormone blockers, really?
I'm sure someone's going to fact check me on that, but my guess is that we're into the millions now at this point. Yeah, that would be my guess.
It says over the last 5 years, there were at least 4,780 adolescents who started puberty blockers and had a prior gender dysphoria diagnosis.
It says it's kind of undercounted, but that
would be a big undercounting.
Less than 1,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess, hundreds of thousands at this, but I could be wrong.
Million sounds great.
Yeah, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I like what Joe Rogan said there. Millions sounds great. Say what you want about Joe Rogan, but his bullshit detector went off there. That reply, I've watched a decent amount of Joe Rogan, mostly like his episodes where he interviews like scientists and whatnot. Those are the best ones. I know when he's like tongue-in-cheek shitting on someone. That's what he was doing there. He said, "It sounds good though, huh?" Because he knows that was Matt Walsh just talking out of his ass. Because it makes the point he's making sound better. Surprisingly based moment from Joe Rogan. Surprisingly based.
It's if to express like irreversible gender changes on children is something like, I've got the number here. 0.000493% of U.S. children aged 6 through 17 go through irreversible gender changes. So I guess I'm just curious, because in the cases where they do undergo it, it's usually to save their life, right? Because they might be suicidal or yeah, right? And they go through like...
I mean, we've seen what a lot of these conservative politicians have said, like in front of the State House, or in the State House when voting on these bills. We recently had a popular Republican, I believe Florida, outright say she would rather have a dead child than a trans child. She said, "You people always ask, would I rather have a dead child or a trans child? And every day I become more sure that I would rather my child not live on this earth anymore than be a victim of the trans agenda." I think that was how she worded it. But yeah, like literally they would rather have a dead child than a trans child. So it's really not a matter, like arguing with these people from that, like these people have never cared. Like an argument from emotion has never worked with these people. When you're arguing with a conservative, you cannot make a point that argues what they stand for will lead to like bad things happening to people. And that's bad because it hurts them and you need to have empathy for those people. You can't argue that point. You have to argue from a very cold, calculated position. Conservatives, even those that have been indoctrinated in this shit, don't care that transphobia is mean and bad and hurts trans people, because the vast majority of them at this point have been convinced that trans people don't deserve kindness. Many of them even believe that trans people outright deserve to die, and they fantasize about inflicting said death on trans people, if you've seen your average, like, transphobe post on Twitter. So, what you have to do is convince them that the arguments that they have been convinced are true that invalidate transgenderism are bullshit. You argue the cold, hard logic of why transphobia is, like, definitively wrong and stupid, and then you can start to convince them that morally they have a responsibility to respect trans people. But first you have to convince them that factually transphobia is retarded. Because at the end of the day, the last thing these people want to be is retarded. The thing the right has convinced a lot of the people, the victims of this propaganda of, is that the left and what the left believes in is retardation. In reality, it is the exact reverse. And you just have to show them that.
Panels, they go through multiple rounds of talking to psychiatrists and doctors. So I guess I'm just curious, why is it you think that this is threatening kids instead of actually helping kids who are at high risk of hurting themselves?
Waiting for you to defend your secular talk video in the Chud chat, if it's in a video or not? What? Oh, you want to, like, argue about the secular talk video? We can do that a little later, but I do have to finish this debate first. I can't cut it off to have an argument with you. But I will say, you are no doubt retarded if you disagree with my take on the secular talk video. I know it's been a while since I've covered how stupid Bernie or Bust is, so that's allowed a fair amount of Bernie or Busters to sort of accumulate in the community, because I haven't, like, dunked on Bernie or Bust in so long, because the election's been so long away. But I want you to know, if you are a Bernie or Buster in my community, you can go back to my older content to see how evident this is. I've got no respect for you. I genuinely see you as, like, a lefty in name only, a progressive in name only. If you are somebody who is American who decides to use your ballot as sort of a condescending, oh, I'm not voting at all, or, you know, I'm going to vote for a third party, even though this ballot could go to help the actual, Democrat that has a chance to win against the conservatives. I have no respect for you. I don't. I legitimately don't. And that's what I have to say to you.
So, Ethan, about 10 years ago, when gender-affirming care was performed on whether that was minors or adults, there was a lot of checks and balances. Now it has become so easy. So they don't have the psychiatrist appointments anymore. They don't have, having to wait several years to transition. Now it's a very fast...
Like, especially now when the right is, like, across the country, Republicans in red states are unanimously trying to ban the ability for trans people to exist, and it's basically just blue states now that are acting as these safe havens for trans people to exist without, like, legislative crackdowns in their rights. Like, you cannot argue that we should have any other top priority than keeping Republicans out of every position of power we possibly can and doing everything in our power to do so. This is just common fucking sense.
Track process, and that's the real issue, because many of these teens, and we're seeing thousands of teens being transitioned to on hormones, the number's really gone up in the last few years. Many of these teens are struggling with other issues. There's a high case, around 1 in 6 of these children have autism. They're being misdiagnosed. There's also kids with depression, bipolar, and they're being told it must be, all of these issues must be because they're in the wrong gender, and they are being fast-tracked. There was a case in Missouri at the St. Louis Children's Hospital, and basically a whistleblower unveiled that they only required like one session with a therapist to get a child on hormones and puberty blockers. So that's the issue when a system is being exploited. And there's been trans people forever, throughout history. There's so many examples of trans people.
Every single example that Ollie London brings up will no doubt be bullshit. I don't know how much Ethan Klein will be on top of debunking it, but in my experience, when we cover conservative propaganda, I think PragerU is a really good example of this. If you want to watch one of my old PragerU videos, I think this is a very good demonstration of what I'm talking about. They're very good at bringing up like 100 different little anecdotes that might not even be what they claim they are. Like, they might completely be lying about the circumstances of the anecdote they're using as an example, but even if they're not, they'll give you a bunch of anecdotes that are meant to imply that this is happening on a much larger scale. And because of that, there is a larger issue. The problem is, it's all they have. These anecdotes are typically complete lies when you actually look into the story behind them, or outright made up. And even if they were true, they're not demonstrated in statistics. When you look at the statistics, the data, the numbers of like that show you whether or not a certain thing is like an issue or an epidemic, it's not represented. There is not an epidemic of trans women assaulting or harming cis women. It's not happening. The stats show the exact opposite. Cis women are actually more likely to be the perpetrators of violence on trans women than the other way around. When you look at the data, these things are not true. But if you can bring up a few solid sounding anecdotes and imply this is a larger issue, you can scare people into thinking, what if it happens to me? Think of Jaws as an example. You realize how rare shark attacks are, right, chat? Like, shark attacks are really rare for how many people are in the water spending time swimming in the ocean. They're really, really rare. And yet, people are terrified of sharks. And you can trace people's terror around sharks to Jaws. People were scared of sharks before the movie Jaws came out, but, like, it was nowhere near the extent to which people are afraid of sharks now because of Jaws. The level of like beach going after Jaws came out was like a noticeable drop. It harmed the economy in beach towns after Jaws came out because so few people went to the beach because they were so scared of sharks. And despite the fact that data has been publicly available and very commonly known even, that shark attacks are extremely uncommon, unlikely, and basically not a danger when you get into the ocean, how many people, including yourself, can you think of in the back of their mind are terrified of a shark attack when they get in the water? In the ocean. A lot of people. Because of essentially propaganda. You could argue that Jaws, in this way, essentially functions as anti-shark propaganda. One anecdote that isn't even real has horrified generations of people and turned them scared of the ocean and an entire species of animal, entire genus, I guess, of animal, despite the irrational fear not being represented as a real problem statistically. That is what the right is trying to do to trans people. Ironically enough, it's actually quite fitting that a shark would be the symbol of the modern day like Zoomer trans symbol online, because sharks, despite really, I mean, they're pretty dangerous creatures, I guess, but like to humans, they are typically not that dangerous to even be in the water with, right? The attacks are quite rare. They're extremely fear-mongered, and people are way more afraid of them than they ought to be. In the same way that trans people, I mean, a trans person might hurt you to defend themselves, right? But like, if you're not fucking with a trans person, they're probably not going to fuck with you. And yet the right has pushed so much propaganda and has basically tried to Jawsify trans people to turn them into this much scarier, more problematic thing than they truly are to the vast majority of people in the broader public. It's basically the Jaws effect, but on trans people. Segment is not over. Let's continue.
But the thing is now is, previously, as difficult as it was, because it's so hard when you're trans to struggle and to think every day that I'm trapped in the wrong body, it is horrific to go through that. But the problem is, years ago, they would have 2 to 3 years they would have to undergo of psychiatrist appointments, doctor's appointments in order to qualify for a transition. Now it has become so easy, and there are thousands of kids being fast-tracked and put on hormones prescriptions, and some kids can now go to states like Colorado or Washington State, which have become sanctuary states. And they don't
I want to actually address what you said about you had said something about Jamie Reed's allegations, right? But that was debunked, right? Because the parents and the children there who actually were attending that facility actually told a completely different story. Have you read their account of that?
Yeah, so I saw recently that they did an internal.
Ethan Klein has clearly done his research. I hadn't heard about this story that Ollie London is referring to. Reminder, at this point, especially now, like every week, 100 misrepresented anecdotal stories are being pushed by right-wing media that could be cited in any anti-trans debate at this point. So the fact that Ethan Klein either has the people on hand to fact check this or did so much research beforehand, he was able to catch this, very impressive. Ethan has clearly done quite a bit of research to catch this this propaganda point as a lie.
Investigation, they said.
But this is a great example. Like, Ollie London makes a point about this gender clinic supposedly having like one interview, one meeting with a like supposed trans kid and then diagnosing them hormones. And then Ethan Klein's like, oh wait, actually I know the true story. The parents and the kids actually told completely different stories than what that article claimed. So like there was an investigation done as well. Like, yeah, I don't know. So like yeah, it's just, you're kind of full of shit.
It wasn't true, but no, I don't believe
that seems significant.
Yes, but I don't believe that at all, because
right,
they're trying to cover their back.
You don't believe the internal investigation?
No, because there were multiple parents. When the Daily Caller originally did the interview with Jamie Reed, there were multiple parents that said basically their kids weren't looked after once they left the clinic. There were no checks and balances, and there were parents confirming that. So, no, I believe the investigation has a lot of bias because it's done by the clinic and they're profiting.
So the internal investigation said there was no wrongdoings. The patients said there was no wrongdoings. So I guess I'm just curious. The people who are claiming that there was something wrong there is like the Daily Caller, Tucker Carlson. Are you saying that they don't have a bias?
Well, I mean, a lot of people have a bias and stuff, but, we have to look at these gender clinics as a whole project.
I love it. Conservatives, like these sort of pseudo-centrist type conservatives, these people who are too much of, massive grifting pussies to actually admit they're conservative, like at least in a one-on-one conversation, because they can't defend conservative perspectives. And they only like say they're conservative or rep conservatism aesthetically for the grift dollars, right? So Ollie London is basically pretending to be like a centrist liberal here. But when these people say shit like that, it's always very clear that they're just trying to sort of level the playing field out. Like, they're trying to sort of like keep the really far right-wingers on board, but level out their rhetoric and their position to become more reasonable to a more center-leaning audience, which is what a fair amount of H3H3's audience would still be. Like, there are a fair amount of people who watch H3 still that are not, like, left-leaning or political at all. So that's who Ollie London is no doubt trying to appeal to.
Veritas exposed multiple clinics the other day talking about medically trans...
Wait, hold on. Did he just say Project Veritas?
The people who are claiming that there was something wrong there is like the Daily Caller, Tucker Carlson. Are you saying that they don't have a bias?
Well, I mean, a lot of people have a bias and stuff, but, we have to look at these gender clinics as a whole. Project Veritas exposed multiple clinics the other day talking about medically trans...
Okay, so Project Veritas has been caught lying about, like, every single huge expose story they've had. They claim that they had, like, evidence that the election was rigged. It ended up all being fake. They literally just fake these supposed giant exposés that are like really high production value, a lot of money behind them, but they are all like definitively lies. It's just the most like blatant propaganda organization there is, with like a very thin veneer of authenticity. And on top of that, the founder is a sexual predator. So like, I just, okay, Ollie.
Transitioning 8 to 11-year-olds. So we have to acknowledge that this is going on in a lot of clinics, and a lot of these clinics are trying to cover their backs by trying to paint a rosy picture that it's perfect.
Did you say
fine.
Project Veritas?
Yes, they did an undercover investigation.
That's the guy who got ousted for being like a sex criminal and like scam artist, James O'Keefe. That's his organization, right?
He's not part of that.
Good shit, Ethan. God, I'm proud of him. I'm actually proud of him. He's doing really well so far. I'm actually really proud of him. Yeah, look at him go.
Organization now. So the organization that left Project Veritas, the original organization, did this investigation.
They don't have a lot of credibility, Veritas. It seems like every investigation they do is just chock full holes of untruths and just blatant lies. I don't think it's a very credible institution for pulling data from.
Well, there's multiple organizations like Project Veritas that do expose this. So Gays Against Groomers, I'm ambassador for them.
Gays Against Groomers, the like designated hate group that's started by straight people, and it's just a bunch of like straight Nazis pretending to be gay people to like pretend like a bunch of gay people hate trans people because trans people go too far. And like, it's literally just a hate group started by straight Nazis pretending to be gay. Unironically, that's what Gays Against Groomers is.
They are also exposing this happening in clinics. Mm-hmm.
Gays Against Groomers. So who's...
Have you heard of that?
I haven't, but who's the groomer then?
So basically, Gays Against Groomers is an organization of hundreds of LGBT people.
Oh no, he hasn't heard of Gays Against Groomers.
people. It includes trans people as well. Basically, this organization is calling out the harms. They're doing investigations of gender clinics, calling out the harms of doing this to kids. Because look,
where's
we
the
get that
grooming come in though? That's the part that I find like really inflammatory, because grooming implies that trans people or trans activists, and it's what you said here in this tweet, that they're pedophiles, that they're sexualizing kids. So where's that evidence come from? Because it's one thing to say we're against, gender affirming care for minors, but it's a whole different thing to say, they're grooming.
Well, that word is basically used because we're seeing many drag shows, like adult drag shows.
Remember, by the way, when conservatives publicly announce that trans people are groomers, what they mean by that is trans people are grooming your children to sexually predate on them and rape them. Like they are calling trans people pedophiles who are grooming kids for sexual exploitation. That is what they are saying. That is what they mean. It is quite obvious it's what they mean. They pretty much outright say it oftentimes in their messaging. When forced to defend this claim, though, they do not defend that point. Instead, they say, no. When we say grooming, we don't mean like the grooming a child for sexual predation grooming. We mean like grooming them in the sense that you're making them more accepting of potentially being trans. That's the grooming we mean. But everybody takes it as like trans people are pedophiles who are sexually grooming kids. It's a Mott and Bailey that they pull. They do the Mott for the vast majority of the public to push the most scary, hysterical, image of trans people they can out to the public. But then when forced to defend that idea, they take a much more defensible, like, I just mean they're, basically they just end up arguing that telling kids it's like gay people are okay, and if they end up being gay or trans or whatever, that's okay as well. They end up basically saying that is grooming because you're conditioning them to being trans. So it's really dishonest. How do we get people to stop believing in this bullshit? Just support my stream, and lefty content creators keep doing this shit. That's pretty much all we can do. And you vote. That's what you can do. Vote blue no matter who.
Shows where kids are attending, and it's very sexually explicit. So that is a form of grooming. We also see these kids' books in public libraries and in schools where they're teaching kids about drag and being trans. That's not a subject a kid should hear. So that is a form of grooming because it's indoctrinating kids.
I've heard, I know that there was that one drag show with kids that was kind of a hot button issue. What other examples can you think of drag shows with kids involved where they're being groomed?
So there's, in the last year, there's an investigative journalist, Taylor Hanson. He's exposed at least 20 drag shows in Texas that are called all-ages drag shows. They're called all-ages drag shows, and they're basically doing sex acts on stage. They have breasts. They're doing very inappropriate things. So, no, it's just...
So hold on, sorry, Ollie, you're making so many claims, and I just want to get to each one. You mentioned an organization, Gays Against Groomers, which was founded by Jamie Mitchell. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So Jamie Mitchell and their partner are ultra MAGA Trump followers, and there's nothing wrong with being a Trump supporter, but they're also anti-transgender. They spread anti-transgender propaganda with QAnon conspiracy theories, and interestingly, the founders are straight. So how is it that they can make a Gays Against a Groomers organization when they themselves are not even gay? That seems disingenuous.
Good shit. Good fucking shit, Ethan. Good fucking shit.
Well, firstly, that's a Wikipedia page. Wikipedia has a lot of bias with the woke people that write on there.
Jamie Mitchell is gay.
Woke Wikipedia.
She's gay. She's a lesbian. All of the people, you have to be LGBT to be a member
How do they check
of Gays Against Groomers. So there's
how do they verify the credentials?
No, I mean, if someone says they're gay or bi, you accept that. You don't say, "Oh, can you prove that you're gay?"
Gays Against Groomers only allows gay and trans people into their movement. Wait, how do they prove that they're gay? Well, you of course take them at their word. So for those that don't know, like obviously if someone says they're gay or trans, you do take them at their word. But in the case of a like hate group that's like claiming it's a bunch of people of a particular like marginalized identity fighting against another group of a particular marginalized identity, and the framing of that group is that because they're part of that marginalized group, they are that gives them authenticity, that lends them value to what they're saying. Like it is somewhat relevant whether or not the people running a group like that are actually gay, I'd say. Yeah, in that context, I think maybe more than like just saying, yeah, I'm totally gay, yeah, totally, yeah, totally, might be required. For example, and I'm sure Ollie London has actively pushed this lie as well, conservatives to this day claim that the shooter of that one LGBT venue in Colorado. I forget what it was called. Where the white nationalist, like super transphobe, went in, the neckbeard guy, and shot up the place. And his dad was like, "Well, when I found out he went in there and he was in that gay bar, I was worried." Club Q, yeah, I was worried that he was there, doing gay shit, and that he was one of them F slurs. But then I found out he was there because he did the shooting. He wasn't a victim, and I'm just glad that he's not gay. I'm just glad he's straight. And that's basically what the dad said. To this day. Oh, and also the guy like had a bunch of like Nazi shit, Nazi memorabilia, Nazi posts all over his like social media and whatnot. Because when he got arrested, he claimed to be non-binary. The right to this day claims the Club Q shooter was a trans shooter. Like every conservative bit, like when conservatives list like the supposed trans shooter epidemic, they always list the Club Q shooter as trans. So not only will they murder you, but they will then frame your murder as trans-on-trans violence to help further the murder of more trans people. Remember, these people are evil. They do not see you as human or deserving of life, respect, or rights, okay? This is not like an equal grounds political debate conversation issue, okay? This is a matter of like blatantly lying, wrong, misinformation spreading demagogues who know that they're lying, spreading hate around a marginalized group to make money. And they know they're doing it. They know it's evil. They know it's wrong. They take joy in it, and they're profiting massively off of it. It is objectively evil.
How can you prove that? So, Jamie Mitchell is a lesbian. All of the members are lesbians, trans. It's not anti-transgender at all. They support people being trans as an adult, but what they're trying to do is calling out the harm that we're seeing caused to children, and that's the real issue here, is about protecting kids.
So go back to your claim about grooming. So you brought up the drag show for kids. Is there any other examples, or are we just talking about drag shows? Because I have to assume that the drag shows, even if it's as widespread as Project Veritas claims, which heaven knows how credible they are, there's got to be other examples to make such bold claims as that there's a whole movement trying to sexualize kids.
Yeah, even if you look at the music industry, you have really shocking performances like Sam Smith, for instance, who is pushing a specific agenda. He has concerts which are allowing all ages. And, if you want to be a musician, do whatever you want, but don't be doing...
I will say, I do love when these conservatives think that they're like really hip with the Zoomers in one of their cultural critiques, but they're actually taking the most like prude, boomer ass position you could possibly take. I'm sorry, but like kids who know who Sam Smith is like Sam Smith and think that you calling Sam Smith like a devil worshiper is cringe. And the rest of the people who hear this don't know who Sam Smith is and don't care or know what you're talking about. So you just come off as like deranged when you say shit like this. Like the attacking Sam Smith thing is just, I don't know, they them pronouns. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't know Sam Smith was trans.
Sexually graphic things. He's doing imitating blowjobs. He has fetish gear on, and there's kids in the audience. So it's not just about drag queens. It's about protecting kids in general. So even if it's Cardi B, I don't think kids should be at Cardi B concert if she's twerking or doing like something very, very sexual. I think it's just about protecting
grooming.
Kids.
But you turn on the TV. You see stuff worse than that, right, on YouTube and stuff. To say they're grooming them seems pretty disingenuous and actually really homophobic and transphobic to put this label that they're groomers, because you understand the gravity of such a claim, right?
Well, it's a very loaded word. I get that, but it's not an attack on the LGBT community at all. It's about basically calling out specific cases. It's not an attack on trans people, calling out specific cases where children are being exposed to something that's highly inappropriate and trying to raise awareness.
Let me show a clip of the person that Ollie London regularly retweets with support nonstop on their Twitter. Matt. Oh, I was in the tiny house in this video. So here's what Matt Walsh has to say about trans people. 2022 will be your year. So a little bit up.
Another point too, and this is something that I want to
that's very loud. Jesus, that was peeking into the red.
Say specifically to the trans activists who are now crying and panicking and hysterically ranting about imaginary genocides. I say they're doing that now. They didn't just start.
For the record, Tennessee just passed a bill that bans drag, and it's only gotten worse since then. I wish I could get the full clip without me talking, but like, I can't find it.
So I see you on social media, and
I want you to know, by the way, this is a villain speech. All the like right, you're gonna look at this like a meteor, like
crying your crocodile tears and claiming that you're being set upon by fascist right-wingers who won't let you just live your lives in peace. What do we ever do to you, you cry? Why are you so angry at us? Well, let me answer that question. You see, the
I'm excited to hear the straw mans he's going to bring up. It's going to be like, why do you groom kids into be smug cunt? Listen, I've mentioned this many times before. The reason why so many conservative propagandists, as this guy is, are so smug is because one of the core tenets of conservatism is cruelty. Being cruel and upsetting minorities and those that are on the left, and doing so smugly, which is, of course, a very good way to frustrate someone, is to be wrong and smug and rude and smug about it. Like, that's part of it, right? Like, they're smug on purpose because cruelty to the left and minorities that the left, advocates for is a virtue on the right. This is just sort of like pure evil. You're watching a villain speech. God, I'm so fucking based. Holy shit. Yeah, anyway, you heard enough of it there, but basically it's like Matt Walsh, like, doing sort of like a smug speech towards like the quote-unquote trans activists, like his victory speech about how like we're getting the laws passed across the country, cracking down on your rights, and you dare call me transphobic at one point, he says, and he smiles at the camera with like a smug grin as he like says that it's ridiculous to call him transphobic. Oh god, it's amazing. Anyway, let's continue.
Awareness of that. So it's not a label that's attached to gay people, lesbians, trans people. It's literally about calling out specific instances of,
I want to ask you about something specific. Actually, since you bring it up, I have seen something troubling from a trans person that I thought was kind of gross. They were selling, it was like a kid's t-shirt with a trans person on it, and then they had like kids' toys with trans people on it, and it was kind of gross and grooming. Have you seen anything like that before?
I've seen t-shirts that the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota wore, protect trans kids.
What is this going to be? This is going to be a gotcha. What is this going to be?
With a knife on it. Things like that. I've seen t-shirts that says protect trans rights with AK-47s on it and stuff. And, I don't think that's helpful messaging for, and that's just trans activists, by the way, Ethan. This is a small number of people. And that's who I'm calling out. That's who Gays Against Groomers are calling out. It's not the trans community.
I love when conservatives are anti-gun, but like when minorities own them to like defend themselves against the genocide they want to do on said minorities. It's like, oh, we love guns. We're so into guns and all that. Not trans people, though. Trans people can't have guns. Not them, though. I will say, more recently, the gun community has gotten a bit less racist. Like, if you're, for example, black and you want to get into guns, like you're, pretty liberal, you're not really into guns or anything, you just, and you go to the range with your friends, for example, and you shoot for the first time, you're like, ooh, okay, that was pretty fun. Okay, that was good. Maybe I want to get my first gun and just have a firearm, right? And you like talk to the person at the range. Let's just say go into a gun store 10, 15, 20 years ago and not being white, there's like a not even 50-50 chance, probably more than 50-50 chance that the person behind the counter is going to be racist, right? Nowadays, gun culture is a lot more racially inclusive than it used to be. It used to be much more of like a white conservative club. But now, you're starting to see, particularly with the crackdown on LGBT rights in this country, a pretty large and booming, as of late, LGBT gun culture. Like, most of the trans and gay people I know at this point own guns, which would not have been the case, I feel like, a decade or so ago. That's more of a more recent development, in large part due to COVID. COVID massively caused gun sales to ramp up. A lot of brand new gun owners were created due to COVID. And for like among the LGBT community, like broadly, these laws getting passed everywhere and the rights, like downright genocidal rhetoric. A lot of LGBT people have realized, like, fuck, I mean, even if I'm not a big fan of guns, like I might want to have one in case like the right-wing militia that lives outside my city rolls in trucks with AK-47s and AR-15s and starts spraying through windows and trying to, like, do a goddamn day of the rope out here. Like, I feel like, yeah, now the right's, like, super against LGBT people being armed for self-defense.
community as a whole, specific trans activists who have have hijacked the trans movement.
So actually, you know what's interesting, Ollie? If you go to your website right now, your merch website, I was actually talking about your merch. You are actually selling kids' lunchboxes with a picture of you depicted as a trans woman, and you're selling it.
No, that's not a trans woman. That's not a trans woman. That's just a K-pop picture of me.
Okay, because this is you. I had a feeling you would say that, because here it is, you wearing that design.
Dog, this is a hentai face. This is literally, like, this is a children's lunchbox where Ollie London, clearly in, like, femme mode here, like, there's no denying this is supposed to be femme mode Ollie London, doing a fucking hentai porn face. Butthole letters? Holy shit. Oh my god, the circles in the Q and the D and the O do look like buttholes. We'll be generous and say those aren't supposed to be buttholes, and this is just an unfortunate interpretation of the bubble lettering. But like that is a sexualized face. This is all right on its own. If I saw a kid bring this to school, like if this was a kid's lunchbox and I saw them bring it to school and I didn't know who Ollie London was, I would hope to God that kid's getting bullied mercilessly, as you know, as weebs should at school. In all seriousness, no, I definitely see them as the weird kid if they brought this to school, but like I wouldn't even think that this is like necessarily like I don't think a kid should be punished or banned from having this as a lunchbox, right? Like I think it's like part of being a kid to like kind of push the boundaries of what is allowed in that respect at school, especially. Like there were always kids who wore those shirts like life is a beach. You know, you had kids who wore shirts that were like, you know, just really close to being like a blatant violation of dress code. And you just know they're trying to push it and see how close they can get without getting in trouble. You guys knew that kid in school, right? You guys had that kid in your school too? Because I always did. Like, I feel like hentai shirts. Yeah, hentai shirts are literally a thing at school. Yeah. There were literally girls that wore hentai shorts. It was always girls that wore the hentai shirts to school because they knew they could get away with it. If a guy wore a hentai shirt to school, not only would it be like social suicide, but it'd be way more likely for a teacher to be like, that's inappropriate, you fucking weirdo creep. But if like a hot like girl wears the hentai shirt to school, it's just it's not perceived in the same way as if like a guy wears a hentai shirt to school. Like you really got to play off the hentai shirt as like a funny ironic joke to not have that end up being a problem with other students, much less the teachers, right? I don't know, but by Ollie's standard, this is absolutely inappropriate to be selling to kids or for kids. This is absolutely, by Ollie's standard and the people that Ollie shills to's standard, this would be considered grooming.
And it's pretty obvious to tell that this is depicting you. This is from just like a month ago. And this is when you were trans. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So do you think it's appropriate to sell this to kids?
Well, it's a lunchbox with a picture of a K-pop cartoon.
Well, it's you as a trans. It's you as a trans woman.
It's me as a K-pop star. It's nothing to do with being trans or not. That's just a cartoon of me as a K-pop star. So it's not. That's not inappropriate.
Right, but at the time, you were a trans woman.
Correct. At the time,
there's no way out. There's really no way out of this one for Ollie London. The only way for Ollie London to like get out of it otherwise is to say, "Holy shit! I didn't even realize that. I should take that down." You're right. But like they're not doing that at this point, so literally nobody who's watching this debate in good faith will see that lunchbox and take Ollie's side that this isn't blatantly sexual.
Time I was a trans woman, but there's nothing inappropriate.
So it's you as a trans woman.
That I was a trans woman at the time. That picture does not depict me as a trans woman. It depicts me as a K-pop star. But
I find that interesting.
Not only is it blatantly sexualized, but it's also depicting Ollie London as a trans woman. That's the funny part. So it's not even the sexualized part that conservatives are likely to get mad about. It's the fact that very clearly is Ollie London as a trans woman being sold as merch actively for kids while Ollie is pushing this narrative.
That you're willing to make that separation when you're making such general claims about the groomers and stuff, because to me, by your own definition, this is pretty groomy. And even if you go, and this is all, well, hold on, Ollie, hold on one sec. Even if you go on your website right now, you're selling the same graphic, Ollie London, Ollie Merch Squad, as you depicted as a trans woman. And if you look at the available sizes, it's just kids, 3 to 4. Do you think it's appropriate for a 3 to 4 year old to buy this shirt?
Yeah, of course. Any K-pop fan, if they want to buy my merch, they're absolutely entitled to. There's no
The K-pop. So basically, Ollie London's gonna keep on trying to say that the fucking hentai porn face is a K-pop thing. Hold on, let's find some K-pop images real fast, guys. Guys, look at this classic K-pop pose. It's a classic K-pop pose. You guys know that particular K-pop pose, right? Everyone knows this K-pop pose. All the K-pop stars do it. Famously, popularized and pioneered by K-pop. It's the K-pop pose. Ollie London's fucked on that point, dude. There's no way out.
nothing inappropriate with that merch at all. It's
That is a trans woman, Ollie. You're not understanding your own logic.
You're clutching at straws.
How am I?
That's
You were okay. Hold on. Let's follow this through. You were a trans woman when you made this. There's a picture of you wearing it. It's obvious.
So there is a K-pop pose somewhat similar to what Ollie London is doing on that shirt. The problem is Ollie London is doing the sexualized, like, agayo version of it, right? So the K-pop pose that I've seen K-pop stars do is like, or like that kind of thing, right? Like a smile and like peace signs, but like the tongue sticking out and the eyes kind of rolling up a bit into the top of the head. That's the taken dick face.
Obviously, you as a trans woman. Here's you as a trans woman, and here's you as a trans woman on the shirt, on a kid's shirt. How am I clutching at straws?
Well, you're clutching at straws. It's an innocent cartoon. It doesn't say anything about indoctrinating.
The tongue
children.
is somewhat sexual. How the tongue is out like that, it's a little disturbing.
Ethan, come on, I'm doing a K-pop pose. You're just clutching at straws.
No, why is the tongue out?
Respectfully, Zan, that might have been the worst ahagao pronunciation I've ever heard. I'll be sure to watch some more hentai for you, okay? Thank you so much for the criticism. I'll be sure to watch more hentai to help fill in that gap in my rhetoric.
I find that a little provocative.
Ethan, it's a cartoon. You're just trying to make.
Well,
a joke
I don't
out of
know
it.
because you're no, I'm not trying to make a joke. I think this is a somewhat serious issue to resolve here because no, I'm being serious, Ollie, because let's at least be consistent. If we're going to accuse people of grooming kids, and which you have made a short-lived but somewhat profitable career of doing, then I think we need to, we need to get on top of this. I just don't think it's appropriate to be selling lunchboxes.
If that lunchbox,
the fangs too. I just noticed that there's fangs, bro. Hentai watch party when? No. That's just too rife for fucking scandal. God, if there was a single under 18 who got into that somehow, like if that ever not only would that just be weird for a variety of reasons, but God forbid if somehow someone underage snuck into that, it would be over, dog. It'd be all ogre.
We need to get on top of this. I just don't think it's appropriate to be selling lunchboxes with a trans woman.
If that lunchbox,
yeah, those are little pink hearts in the eyeballs, Heavy Gretel. Another thing that you'll oftentimes see in hentai, in a variety of circumstances.
If that lunchbox had something inappropriate or sexual, that would be wrong. But this is an innocent cartoon of me doing a K-pop pose. There's nothing wrong with that particular picture. If it was inappropriate or in a sexual way, that would be completely wrong. And of course, I would never sell that. But that's an innocent drawing of a cartoon, Ethan.
Do you think it's appropriate for a drag queen, for kids to buy, let's say a kid's at a drag queen show. That's grooming. And let's say they are selling lunchboxes to the kids with a picture of a drag queen on it, doing a cute pose or whatever, right? Not sexual, but they're in drag. Do you think it's appropriate for a kid to carry that lunchbox?
Well, I think it's appropriate if the kid's at a drag show that's inappropriate, because some drag shows are generally not inappropriate.
Okay,
a lot of them are becoming
that's
sexualized.
interesting. So some drag shows are appropriate and some aren't.
Oh my God, Ollie is getting fucking blown the fuck out. Oh my God. Oh no. Ollie biting the bullet and admitting there are some okay for kids to attend drag shows? That literally the entire argument that conservatives have like fallen onto now is that any form of exposure to trans people or drag, to kids is child abuse, grooming, pedophilia, should be criminalized, etc., banned, etc., etc., etc. The idea that like you would cede that ground and bite that bullet because it's so impossible to argue, that like basically the only way to argue that, like the only way to argue from Ollie's perspective that, like drag shows are grooming without biting the bullet here would be to just outright say and have to argue somehow that trans people and people doing drag are actively doing something that is like harmful to children, and proving that is impossible. Like outside of like, obviously if there's a case where it's like more of a like a strip club than a drag show, I don't think kids should be present for the same reason I don't think you should take kids to a strip club. But the vast majority of like drag shows are safe for work. At least safe for work enough that like kids can certainly attend and see what's happening, right? And especially with the right-wing like hysteria lately, drag events have only gotten more like either kid-friendly or exclusive by age, right? For example, I won't name it, but Vosh and Demon Mama and a few of our friends, we went shooting a little while ago, and afterwards we went to a restaurant to eat lunch afterwards. And it's like a very like LGBT centric like restaurant. It's the kind of place where like they have like LGBT like what's it called, trivia nights, and it's called like drag trivia something. I forget what it's called. Like they do drag shows and stuff there. It's very much an LGBT centric place. It's not a gay bar, and it's not like you don't go in there and you're not like assaulted by like with like gay porn and like gay sexual anything. Like it's very much like you'd just walk in and think it any other restaurant, right? The food's amazing. But because it is such an LGBT centric establishment, they card you at the door. Like you go, even if you're not drinking, you go into that place and they have a bouncer at the door who cards you to make sure you're 21 years or older or 18 years or older. Because they don't want like kids going into the restaurant and some weirdo taking a picture of like a kid in like walking by some random patron at the restaurant who's dressed in a way that can be pushed as propaganda to the right. Like, I don't know. It's just sad. It's a little bit sad, but it's also like more so adds to the fact that the conservatives are literally making a mountain out of not even a molehill, but an anthill at this point.
Correct. It's about doing something. No, correct. It's about if you're going to do anything in front of kids, it should be PC. It should not have anything sexual. But sadly, a lot of these shows are doing sexual things, so kids should not be there. If their merch is there and it's a show that's sexual, they shouldn't be there in the first place.
Okay, this is interesting. So you're saying it is okay for kids to go to drag shows?
I'm not saying that at all. I don't think they should in general. But I'm just saying
if they're not sexual, and I would assume it's not because it's for kids, right? I mean, if they're doing sexual stuff, I would consider that. Obviously, everyone would consider that inappropriate. Mm-hmm. But I believe you've just...
And I love how matter-of-fact Ethan is about it. Not even allowing for there to be the attack of, oh, so you think it's okay for there to be sexual stuff shown to kids? Like, well, obviously, if there's sexual stuff happening, that shouldn't be allowed. But if it's a drag show for kids, then nothing sexual would be happening, right? Can you give me some examples? And that puts the onus on Ollie to give examples. And I'm starting to understand at this point that while I do think Ethan Klein and his team probably did a lot of research, it's also very clear Ethan has multiple people behind the camera or on the other side of the camera, live fact-checking Ollie's lies and giving Ethan like the actual truth in a very condensed form for him to retort with. That's honestly the dream, right? Like my dream streamer setup is that like me and all of my streamer friends live and work out of like the ultimate streamer compound. And on top of that, when we live stream, we've actively got like one or two or a team of people who are there to help with like stream production as it's happening. Like whether it be like actively sending links and citing sources that I need at a moment's notice, in debates, like helping out with like fact checking arguments that an opponent has made so I can catch them in lies quickly. The right does this pretty much all the time. Like that is the right's main way of formatting their content. Obviously, Steven Crowder does this, Matt Walsh does this, Ben Shapiro does this. Like list a conservative pundit, they do this. No lefty figures do this besides, like, maybe Kyle Kalinske, certainly TYT, though they're not even really left-wing anymore as far as their messaging lately, and Sam Cedar's show, I guess. Like, besides the really big ones, which are, like, you know, a handful that exist, period, most lefty content creators that are making, like, political content, not only are they grassroots funded by their own audiences, but they're also forced to, you know, do their own research, source their own sources, and basically, on the fly, run an entire show without any help. The dream is to be able to achieve what the right has in spades for the left.
Just said drag shows are safe for kids. In fact, you would even be okay. Well, hold on. You even said you'd be okay with them carrying a drag show lunchbox.
No, look, I just don't think kids should be anywhere that is putting ideas into their heads. You know, if a show is innocent, you know, that's obviously better than it being a sexual show, but I still don't think kids should be exposed to gender ideology.
So, but what about this lunchbox you're selling to kids?
That has nothing to do with any kind of ideology. It's a K-pop picture. So
yeah, but you're in drag in the picture. You're trans.
I'm not in drag.
Well, you're trans. Sorry, yeah, you're right. You're not in drag. I misspoke. You're trans. You're a woman. You're expressing yourself as a woman on the box.
It's just a cartoon, Ethan. I don't know why you keep going on about it. It's a cartoon.
It's just a cartoon. I mean, I feel like you're trying to downplay the significance of this, Ollie. I'm just afraid that some of your...
I feel like this was intentional, but Ethan rewording Ollie's retort as it's just a cartoon feels like he's drawing a comparison to the same line of logic lolicons used to defend their pedophilia. I don't know if that was intentional on Ethan's part, but I picked up on it. That's the impression I got. And I hope other people did too. And if that was intentional on Ethan's part, bravo.
Some of the people that you associate with might consider this grooming by your own standard. I'm just looking out for you and your reputation.
It's just silly, Ethan. It's an innocent cartoon. If it was an inappropriate picture, that would be wrong.
Okay. What do you make of this picture? Are these kids in danger? Your thoughts?
I haven't seen the video of that particular show.
There's literally nothing happening in this image that is objectionable. So for starters, I've literally had teachers, like cis women teachers in school who like dressed more showy than this. Like, oh my God, guys, when I was in 5th grade, okay, my teacher was a MILF, this smoke show of a MILF, okay? And oh my God, dude, I was like, I don't know, in 5th grade, I would have been, I don't even know how old, but I was just like, God damn. Like, yeah, she dressed more provocatively and, like, with more skin showing than this drag queen is here. And not only that, all the parents are here. The kids are all smiling. This kid's definitely, you know, cheesing it up. All the parents are there literally holding their kids. The parents are smiling. The kids are smiling. The, like, drag queen's dressed completely appropriately. Honestly, if you showed me this image and said she wasn't a drag queen, or just, like, showed me this image, I wouldn't even assume she was a drag queen or, like, a trans woman. And on top of that, the book she's reading isn't even some LGBT propaganda. I mean, okay, the name of it sounds like LGBT propaganda, but it's The Rainbow Fish, which is, like, it's, like, so like, if... Most of you seeing this image here probably unlocked ancient memories. It's like that one carpet that we all seem to have unanimously had in our, like, very young classrooms, like very early on, where it's like the little town with the roads, and it's like the little town with the roads and, like, the layout of a town. You all know the one. You all know the one. You all, I don't even need to explain anymore. It's the same kind of thing. There was who else had that one book with the hat stack? I don't remember what it was called, but the guy with the bunch of hats, that was a good one. The Giving Tree was a classic. Yeah. I tried to peel off the shiny scales. I would literally rub the shiny scales, and, like, there was something about the fact the book had texture to it, and that there were, like, different shiny, like the scales had different shiny textured, like, reflections on it that, like, really pulled me into that book. That book's a masterpiece. The Cat in the Hat. I mean, The Cat in the Hat just goes hard. Anything Dr. Seuss was always a classic. It was always a banger.
And it depends what book they're reading. If the drag queen is
it appears to be depicting some fish, a couple of fish in the ocean. It seems like
that's the rainbow fish.
The rainbow fish. It seems to be the rainbow fish, Ollie.
Well, you know, I think a lot of these books are pushing even subtle messages on gender ideology, trying to tell kids
Guys, I don't think you understand what it's like to have a children's book that I'm pretty sure was published well before I was seeing that book in like kindergarten and first grade on the bookshelves, like in the library and in the classroom. Like the idea that that book would be called woke LGBT propaganda. It was published in 1992. This is really a good example of how these conservatives, if you just like let them reel out their line long enough, they'll eventually like out themselves as extremely unsympathetic and extremely like hard to identify with. Like most of these conservative pundits are not interesting people that most of their viewers could relate to. Like I don't feel like Ben Shapiro could tell a story about his childhood and most people would be able to relate. I feel like most of these people had really, like, usually born into wealth, pampered, coddled childhoods where they didn't have much interesting happen to them. And, like, on top of that, it's just, how do you not recognize the rainbow fish, right? It's just, it culturally disconnects you from so much of the audience that you know Ollie London wants to reach. And it just, I don't know, it makes me happy that Ollie London doesn't know what the fucking rainbow fish is and is, like, calling it woke. Can you imagine being, like, a 16 to 17-year-old, like, kind of chuddy, like, Zoomer who's, like, watching this debate because you like Ollie London's detransition stuff and you're concerned about, like, trans people or whatever, and you see Ollie London call the fucking rainbow fish woke and not even know what it is. Can you imagine how, like, disillusioning for them that would be?
You should be trans and become LGBT, and kids should make that decision on their own. So if that book is teaching them about, you know, transitioning or becoming a drag queen, that's inappropriate.
It's
and that's
the rainbow fish.
Yes, but I haven't read the book. I can't see what the book is. So based on that one picture, does that book contain subtle messaging that's trying to tell kids to change their gender when they shouldn't be thinking about things like that? And, you know, in Florida, they've obviously banned books in the classroom that teach gender ideology. And there's a lot of books, kids' books. There's a book called The Gay ABCs, and that pushes gender ideology. For 2-year-olds, it's 2+. And I don't think that's appropriate for a kid that just should be reading kids' books that are completely innocent. They shouldn't even be...
What do you make of this? What do you make of this lunchbox, though?
Why do you keep going back to lunchbox?
Well, because you know, it's got a picture of a trans woman on a kid's lunchbox.
Dude, I love that. Ethan gets like literally Ethan gets the dub and then immediately moves on to the next topic to get the dub on. Like he takes the dub on a topic and then doesn't continue to like roll it out further. Because if you continue to draw it out, there is the potential that Ollie could actually get a dunk on you. But Ethan's just going for all the most powerful like swings pretty much. He's swinging and he's hitting home runs in every swing. And he immediately moves on to the next point as soon as he's taken the dub. He doesn't stay on it long enough to potentially catch any L's in that point. Because Ollie could bring up one single anecdote that's actually a real, true story that supposedly backs up his point, and that could make Ethan look like kind of bad, and he might not have a retort to that. But if he moves on to the next thing, it can be nothing but dub after dub after dub, which is what this has been so far. He doesn't let Ollie, like, pivot.
Got a picture of a K-pop star on the lunchbox.
Who's the K-pop star? Who's the K-pop?
Come on,
it's you, right?
Me.
Yeah, it's you. And this K-pop star is a trans woman, right?
I was trans at the time. The image doesn't necessarily depict any gender.
So you're saying, did the photo of you? It's
not even a photo of me. It's literally a cartoon. I had an anime cartoon drawn of me.
Right. Right.
Would you buy it?
Sorry.
Would you buy it for your kids?
I mean, I wouldn't just because I don't want to support you financially, but okay. But theoretically, I don't think I'd have a problem with. No, I wouldn't have a problem.
I love him just matter-of-factly dropping that. That was pretty good. That was pretty smooth.
With my children looking up to a trans person? Of course not. What would be wrong with that?
And Ethan, look, I don't have a problem with trans people at all. I'm just saying that certain things, when it comes to gender identity, if transgenderism is being pushed on young kids in preschool or even elementary school when they shouldn't be thinking about that, I think it's wrong to expose them to that. I think
exposing them to
trans people,
exposing them to trans people, like this lunchbox is. Right?
You're really obsessed with that lunchbox. You need to get one.
No, but I think it's a really important point that you're not, coming to terms with. We're exposing kids to a trans woman. Don't you think that's wrong? Why is it still on your website, at least?
It's come on, Ethan. I don't know what to say. It's a cartoon of a K-pop star, and it's very innocent. It's just like a little anime drawing. It's nothing. If I was doing something inappropriate, if I had, protect trans kids on there, that would have a message. That would have a.
Remember, guys, protect trans kids. That's grooming. That's a problem. A shirt that says protect trans kids. That's a problem. But a shirt with a sexualized anime girl, for all intents and purposes, that's what the image depicts, if, like, anybody saw it, doing the fucking hentai face that is being marketed like on shirts and lunchboxes for kids 3 to 4 years old. That's not a problem, though. Protect trans kids. That's grooming, because it pushes an agenda.
Loaded gender ideology message, but it literally says Ollie Squad with a cartoon of me doing the peace sign. It's like super cute, super innocent, just like most K-pop stars are like super cute, you know? There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, aren't you making like the Ahigo face a little bit?
God, okay. I also want to remind you all that Ollie is like a very much a grown man, like well into 30s, I think Ollie London is. There's just something about like the way that Ollie London engages with, well, obviously the stalking was super fucking creepy, but like even beyond that, just like Ollie London is just a fucking creep when it comes to like K-pop and Korean people. Like, I think K-pop, or okay, I think K-pop. I think Ollie London has like some kind of fetish for Korean people, and that's probably part of it. I think he's definitely a Korea boo, and I think he's like also kind of a weirdo creep. Just like, yeah, that's really the only way to describe it. Just like weirdo creep is the vibe that I get.
Well, do you think I should make it more masculine?
No, the Higo face is like some kind of hentai thing, isn't it?
I have no idea.
That's when you cross your eyes and stick out your tongue.
Oh, really? Well, my eyes are
You don't
wide
know
open.
about that?
My eyes are wide open. I
Hold
do
on,
watch
hold
some
on,
anime, but I
hold
don't
on.
know.
You don't know about the Higo face?
No.
Oh, it's pronounced a higo? That makes that rolls off the tongue a lot better than ahegao. So it's a higo. No? No? How do I pronounce it? Ahegao. So it's a hegao? A hegao. A hegao. A hego? I hate you all.
I don't believe you. Come on.
No, I watch anime, like I watch Attack of the Titans
That's
and stuff.
right,
but I'm
Cat,
not
my
really-
brother.
Okay. All right. So, you might have just noticed that Ollie London called Attack on Titan Attack of the Titans. And that's really funny on its own. But you know what makes it even funnier? I showed my mom Attack on Titan. We're now on season 4, and she famously like gets the names of characters and shows wrong. And like mostly correct, but kind of wrong. She calls it Attack of the Titans. So I find that it's like the most fucking boomer thing. I don't know. I guess this is like a boomer thing or whatever. To be fair, Attack on Titan is pretty good. It is pretty great. As far as I remember, though, there is no ahegao hentai face in Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan is, as far as anime goes, very non-sexualized. Like, very, very non-sexual.
This is it, and you can see the resemblance, right? Here's the Ahigo face.
Go on.
It's like a hentai reference. But
Okay.
but you see the resemblance, right?
Can you put them side by side?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to.
I mean, that's quite a cute drawing.
Right, but that's like a woman like orgasming is what that is.
Well,
Or like
well, that's not
lust, it's like a lustful kind of sexual gratification.
April, you're
face.
really clutching at straws.
Am
I'm
I?
literally like, I've got my eyes open, I'm doing the peace sign, and
What
you're
is-
trying to dissect it and say, this, honestly.
Right. It just seems to me that even as a trans person, you shouldn't
God,
be
the faces are like damn near identical too. It's great.
exposing kids to that. It seems like you're shoving gender ideology down kids' throats by selling them a lunchbox with a trans woman on it. You don't see my point at all? You don't get it?
No, I don't. You know, if I would see your point completely. If, for instance, it had messaging on there, like some political, because I don't think kids should be exposed to politics either. No political or gender ideology message. If that was on there, that'd be different. If it was a sexually suggested image, but this is literally an innocent cartoon. I've got my eyes open. I'm doing the peace sign. You could not get innocent. What do I need to do even like to please people? Do I have to like close my eyes?
Well, I personally don't necessarily have a problem. What is your fascination with the eye wideness? I haven't said anything about that.
About what? Sorry.
You said, what do I have to close my eyes? I didn't know what that meant. You kept mentioning about like the eye wideness of how wide it is. I don't know why you keep bringing that up.
No, I'm just saying that. Look, in the picture, my eyes. It's not even me, by the way. It's a cartoon, but the eyes are very wide open,
Right.
like
Of you.
glistening.
It's
I'm just saying, like, what's wrong with having my eyes?
It's not even me. It's a cartoon. Okay, like literally Ollie London is just fumbling the bag hardcore here. Like Ollie probably should have left this discussion 30 minutes ago. like after they realize they are not going to pull any dubs out of this.
Eyes open, like we're human beings, we have to have
I
our
don't
eyes
know why
open.
you're
Like, would
talking
it be
about
better if
eyes
I close
open.
my eyes? Would it be better if I close my eyes?
I don't know what that means, Ollie. Here's a reference to popular culture with the Ahigo face. It's, like kind of an e-girl thing. You're probably aware of that.
Well, I'm not an e-girl, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, but you're on the internet, and it's from anime, which you seem to be. Okay, but let's move
No,
on.
I do know anime and stuff. I don't know anything to do with that pose. Literally, I've got my mouth open like this. Peace. I always have my mouth open, like.
No.
Sure.
No, the tongue's hanging out. Nope, the tongue's actively hanging out. Oh, the bag is fumbled hard here. Ollie London looks so bad. Like, when Ethan originally brought up this point, I honestly thought it was, like, pretty weak. Like, I almost paused it and said this is pretty weak. But then upon seeing how Ollie London just fumbled the response, I'm glad that he's staying on it for so long and keeps bringing it back, because Ollie just keeps making themselves look worse and worse and worse, like, with each response.
Sure.
Come on.
Let me see that again. Looks really natural when you do it.
Thanks.
Yes, girl. So but you identify as a male now. You're not trans. We're over that.
No, I'm basically I got to a point where I was going to probably die from the surgery I was doing, and I was really mentally struggling. Had a lot of mental health struggles based on a variety of issues, which I talk about in my book. From when I was being bullied very severely as a kid, I was always told I was like ugly, or I looked like a monster, or I was more feminine, or I had man boobs. So I just used to have all those things and it left me with trauma. So it kind of messed up my head. And as an adult, I didn't deal with that in the way that I should have. I should have had therapy. I should have spoke to someone. Instead, it was almost like self-harming. So all this crazy surgery was me kind of lashing out at the bullies, and it was very, very destructive for me and for other people. So I'm glad to be over that.
Do you think that people who are bullied are at a higher chance of becoming trans?
Yes, definitely. So I talk about this in my book. There's a lot of studies. There was a study in Finland by the top transgender clinic that was basically transitioning a lot of kids, and they said around 45% of the kids had experienced severe bullying. So that led to their gender dysphoria identity. But there's also the other side.
Your theory is that
I know that study. It doesn't claim what Ollie London just claims it says. I don't know why Ollie would say that, because that study comes to like a damn near opposite conclusion to what Ollie just said. Like, damn near the opposite.
That the bullying leads to the dysphoria, not the dysphoria leading to the bullying, which would be more logical.
I was just about to say as well, but there is also the flip side of that, where kids are being bullied because of their identity, because maybe a boy is more feminine or a girl is more like a tomboy. So they're also being bullied for that. But in certain studies, the one in Finland at Tampere University, they found that there was a significant correlation between a kid being bullied.
Yeah, that particular study, I'm pretty sure I'm not mistaken. The conclusion of that study was literally the opposite of what Ollie London is claiming right now.
And the onset of their gender dysphoria coming afterwards rather than before. But, of course, it works both ways.
Like, the outcome of the study, if I recall correctly, literally found that bullying of LGBT kids is more likely to enforce them to stay in the closet and not come out and publicly identify and live as either LGBT or like gay, trans, or gay, bi, lesbian, or trans as their like true identity. Like, the study literally found that the bullying makes you less likely to come out as trans if you're LGBT. And there's no findings that suggest that cis people are being turned trans or dysphoric by bullying. There is evidence that cis people can be turned dysmorphic, body dysmorphic from bullying. That's a thing, but that is different from gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia, even though, as I mentioned before, conservatives famously could not distinguish between the two things for a very long time in discussions, are not the same thing. That you can have the same thing, they can tie to, or you can have both of those things, or just one of them. Like, they're not the same thing.
Let's see here. I have that theory you're citing in front of me.
Tampere University, Finland. Yeah.
Here it is. Let's read the conclusion. There's the abstract.
Hey,
thing.
Let's go. Hell yeah. All right. See, Ethan has the research team behind him.
Let's see. The conclusion says gender identity, especially non-binary identity, is associated with both being bullied and perpetrating bullying, even when a range of variables, including internal stress and involvement in bullying and the opposite role, are taken into account. This suggests that bullying during adolescence may serve as a mechanism of maintaining heteronormality, which I think what that means is that
it's heteronormativity. But yeah, literally the conclusion says, actually, LGBT kids being bullied serves as a mechanism for maintaining heteronormativity, which is basically a very, matter-of-fact scientific way of saying it basically pressures these kids to stay in the closet and not come out as LGBT, as I said before. I paraphrase the conclusion, but that's literally, the conclusion is the opposite of what Ollie London just cited this study is saying. That is the level of lying these people will do. That is why it's so hard to talk with these people, because you either need to have done the research beforehand. I knew about this study, so I knew this was bullshit because I've seen conservatives bring it up. But like, if you don't know that, you either need to be able to Google that, like quickly, like Google like that study and fact check, or have someone there to fact check it live and then just like figure out it's bullshit and send you the reason why it's bullshit and what you need to say. That's what Ethan has going for him right now, and it's what the vast majority of conservatives have going for them. Like Tim Pool and his show, it's less so fact-checking he has going for him, and it's just like his guys sending him a nonstop feed of articles and stories for anecdotal arguments to back up claims he's making in the debates he has on his show. And of course, his opponents are sitting there, no phone or laptop or tablet or anything like that to live, fact check or anything like that. They're actively in like the worst situation. They're not even playing on the home field. They've been deprived of any ability to fact check and live, refresh themselves in info. Because remember, these people don't have the truth in their side, and they'll even frame you being mad about that as you being unreasonable, because to them, it's not the truth that matters. It's who is the best at doing the blood sports, performance of debate online. And I love doing the blood sports performance of debate, but that is what it is. It's just a performance.
Bullying actually results in people rejecting their transness in favor of heteronormality. I think so it seems to be saying the opposite, actually, of what you've claimed it said. Do you see what I'm referring to? Heteronormality?
Yeah, no, I see that. I see that article. That, if you actually read the full study, which I've read the full study, you can find it on the National Institute of Health.
Oh, no, this is the study. Yeah, this is the study. It's the Dove.
Finland, yeah.
Yeah, this is it. And then this is the author's conclusion right there. I mean, that's pretty much that. This is the one you're talking about. Do you disagree?
Yes, but the study's also saying it's associated with being bullied and being the perpetrator. So it's basically saying
that but the message. This is the last sentence. So let's read this together carefully.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests that bullying during adolescence may serve as a mechanism of maintaining heteronormality. So
heteronormativity. So conservatives will also do this as well. When studies just refuse to have any conclusion that conservatives agree with, because conservatives are just anti-science as a principle, what they start doing is they'll take a study and they'll look at the data it collected, and they'll interpret it themselves into a conclusion that is their own opinion, and disregard the conclusion of the actual scientists that did the study and the meta-analyses that took the data and analyzed it and came to a conclusion. They don't want that, they're like, no, we don't want the conclusion. The conclusion doesn't agree with what we say. No studies typically agree with what the right says. So instead, they'll take raw data and then claim it says a thing it doesn't. And that's what Ollie London is trying to do right now. And Ethan Klein's just repeatedly saying, look at the conclusion, stop it, look at the conclusion. That's what matters here. So basically, they just focus hardcore on raw data that they can twist into their own opinion-based narrative and just hope you will never check and see what the actual conclusion of the study was that the actual scientists came to.
Do we understand what that says?
No, I get what it's saying. It's basically saying that some of these kids that are being bullied will maintain their original identity because of the bullying.
No, not some. That's what the study found happens. The study found that there's a high likelihood of that happening, that bullying of LGBT kids has a very high likelihood of keeping them in the closet. Not that some, but the majority of cases, that is what happens. That bullying and ridicule from others, it keeps LGBT people in the closet.
Correct, but the study also...
Who could have thought?
So if you read the full study, the study also speaks, there's a high correlation between, there's two different findings in the study. There's a finding that around 45% of the kids are bullied, and that causes the gender dysphoria. And there's also part of the study which also says, the conclusion is finding that some of these kids are bullied because of their gender dysphoria, and it makes it worse. So
it seems like if two outcomes are possible, then it doesn't seem that interesting. I wonder why you bring it up.
Well, no, read the full study. It also talks about the correlation between autism.
I mean, this is the author. They wrote the conclusion right here. This is their...
That's a small summary on your...
That's the author. That's the author. That's their conclusion.
Correct.
Right.
But if you read in the National
better
Institute
to draw a conclusion than the author of the study.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I've read the full study multiple times on the National Institute of Health. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that if bullying prevents people from becoming, according to this, bullying prevents more kids from transitioning? Do you believe that we need more bullying?
No, I'm an advocate against bullying. I think.
Oh, this is such a good line of questioning. Okay, so the study shows that bullying actually leads to less trans kids. So considering you want there to be less trans kids, do you think bullying is a good thing? Because, like, it seems to be leading to the outcome that you want. Such a good line of questioning. And doing it very matter-of-factly, like, not in a way that makes it sound like you're offended, not in a way that's, like, aggressive and, like demanding, just in a very matter-of-fact way, like, oh, okay, so, like, if you don't like trans people very much, the study shows that, like, bullying means less trans people. So how do you feel about bullying? Are you in favor of it? Because it, like, leads to less trans people. So, I mean, I think you would be, but I'm just curious. You know, like, very non-confrontational, but regardless, Ollie has to answer it, and it still makes Ollie look bad. This is really good debate performance. Like, this is astonishingly good debate performance. And to be fair, Ollie London isn't exactly, like, the top-tier opponent, but, whew, this is still pretty damn good. Even if Ethan was going up against someone else, this would still be damn good debate performance. Like Matt Walsh or, like, Ben Shapiro or something.
Whoever gets bullied, it's so wrong. I've been bullied myself, and I'm an advocate.
But if bullying results in less transitioning, then that, according to what you're saying, is the best outcome for these kids.
No, I don't agree at all. No kid, even if a kid is feminine or a girl is a tomboy, they should not get bullied. No one should get bullied. They should be provided with support. But if somebody wants to transition, I'm not against people transitioning. I just don't think it's right as a kid, because a lot of these kids are going through so many issues during that time. They are not in the right frame of mind to make an informed consent decision.
If a child is suicidal, do you believe that they should transition to save
so
their life?
So there's a lot of clinics and doctors that use this argument. There's a clinic called Kaiser Permanente in California.
You can see, instead of answering the question directly, Ollie London is trying desperately to pivot the conversation to an anecdote they can use to push a narrative that a broader issue exists. So they're like, actually, well, a lot of these trans clinics claim this stuff, and there's an example that's like bringing up another example they can try to push a anecdote, because all these people have are anecdotes. Most of them are lies that can be fact-checked and proven wrong, but they count on you not doing that, and they just use these tiny examples, no data or evidence or studies. When they do bring up studies, it's stuff like what just happened that Ethan fact-checked and proved wrong. They just lie about what studies say, because they can just name a study. They'll just say it says something it doesn't, and then they hope you don't check, because it's a live discussion. And Ethan did check, and called Ollie out on their bullshit. And remember, this is not unique to Ollie, okay? Every conservative pundit who hates trans people is like this. Ugh. Every one of them is like this. This is all they have. When you really grind them down enough, past all the rhetoric and all of the fancy talking, this is all they have. Everything they believe in falls apart. They just hate minorities. And when you try to question them on that, very quickly you can expose how inconsistent their standards are, and how the only through line, the only consistency, the only common denominator is their hatred of trans people, and their framing of trans people as the bad guy who are undeserving of any respect or love or humane treatment in every issue that involves them, regardless of how hypocritical certain positions may be compared to others.
Kaiser Permanente.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. So basically, they have used with multiple people that have since detransitioned, Chloe Cole and Layla, another detransitioner. They basically told them your kids are going to commit suicide if you don't transition them. But what they said afterwards is they actually felt worse 6 months down the line after their transition, because they've got hormones in their body, they've got puberty blockers, and they even had the whole mastectomy.
That the vast majority of people that transition don't regret it. I think it's like 95%. 99%. Are you aware of that stat?
Yeah, it's more than 95.
You don't hear the cases of the detransitions.
Are you aware, Ollie, that
not only is the detransition rate and like the transition surgery regret rate lower than 1%, not only that, but the vast majority of that 1% of detransitioners, or of people who detransition, that vast majority of that single 1% don't detransition because they had like a false diagnosis and they aren't actually trans, or they like regret transitioning because it doesn't make them happy. In the vast majority of cases, most people detransition because, one, they run out of access to the resources to transition. So like money for buying, HRT, money for surgery, clothes, things like that. And the second most common reason is lack of familial and societal support. So friends not being supportive or even antagonistic, and particularly most commonly family being antagonistic. Not only this, but data also shows that when having just a single accepting family member, the depression and suicidal ideation rate for gender dysphoric youth goes down by like 75% by having one supportive parent in their life, parent or friend. Reduces their chances of suicide and suicidal ideation and depression by like nearly 75%, if I recall correctly. It was a jaw-dropping statistic. It's like, you know how like you're right? Like just sort of intuitively you know that a position you hold is correct, but then you find out it's like way more, like your correct position is backed up way more heavily by data than you would have even guessed. Like you're surprised at how correct you are. That's what happened when I found out that stat. Like how much like being accepted and having acceptance from a friend or family member decreases the rate of depression and suicidality in trans people. Like it is a jaw-dropping stat.
99% of kids that transition do not regret it.
No, I don't support that statistic. I think it's wrong because these clinics...
From what authority?
I don't support that statistic. Oof.
Do you disprove that statistic?
Well, look, these clinics make these studies. They don't even do follow-up studies. There's an example of a
Do you not trust studies? Because you just told me to read one.
Look, what I'm saying is the gender clinics make billions of dollars every year. Their studies are skewed and biased.
In a review of 27 studies involving almost 8,000 teens...
God, I love how Ethan won't let Ollie, like, pivot into like a diatribe of anecdotes. I love it. I fucking love it. He knows Ollie London's game.
In adults who had transgender surgeries, mostly in Europe, US, and Canada, 1% on average expressed regret. For some, regret was temporary, but a small number went on to detransition. But that's 1%. That seems like a very small amount to be singularly focused on. And this is 27 studies, so this is a massive kind of conclusion, right? A scientific conclusion, a consensus, if you would.
Yes, but what I'm saying is there's a clinic, for instance, Tavistock Clinic, which was the main clinic in the UK.
There we go. Another anecdote. Anecdote after anecdote after anecdote. Ollie tried their hand with a study, just like naming a study that they could think of the name of off the top of their head and saying it says something it doesn't, and found out can't get away with that. I'll get called out. So now it's just trying different anecdotes, but Ethan won't let Ollie do it. It's so beautiful.
They were doing studies as well. They weren't bothering to check with the detransitioners. They didn't bother to check with the detransitioners. They didn't check how the hormones were affecting over
I know what you're
a year.
talking about. That English one for
yeah.
So that one, if I recall, I looked into that. I believe it was people say it was shut down. It was actually wasn't it?
Being shut down,
right? But
still open.
They're actually making a bigger one so they can serve more needs. So it's not really being shut down actually. Say the name again.
That is a very like. Once again, the right will literally tell the most blatant lies. So, like, I guess a gender clinic, a gender clinic shut down a location to open a larger location that can, like, serve more purposes, has more staff and more resources. And they framed, like, the gender clinic moving locations to be bigger and better as that gender clinic shutting down because they shut down that, because they're moving. So they left that location, that one has shut down technically, and they've moved to a new one. They published that story as the gender clinic shutting down. That is the level of honesty these people operate on. They will twist the most insane falsehoods from the truth. You have to be on the ball when it comes to fact-checking the things these people say.
What is it?
It's called Tavistock.
Tavistock. Yeah.
So that one's actually being shut down this year because basically the National Health Service, which is basically looks after all the hospitals in the UK for the government, they actually said that there were a lot of ethical violations and stuff, and they also changed their policy based on what happened at that clinic via internal investigations. They found that many of these kids were being pushed to transition without having checks on their mental health, and they're basically being pushed into it in fast track very quickly.
Do you think it's significant though that of the patients, of the actual people who that transition, only 1% regret it? You're not acknowledging that?
I don't trust studies.
Why?
Even if you're saying it's
27 studies.
I don't
Then why did you
trust
tell me to read this one,
studies.
Ollie?
Oh no. God, Ollie is fumbling here. I don't trust studies. Oh. I mean, mask off, I guess.
You use studies when it's convenient for you, but you don't when it goes against your thesis. I don't understand your consistency with studies. Do we like them or no?
What I'm trying to say, Ethan, is the gender clinics are very, very powerful.
Do we?
They
No,
control
Ollie, do
a lot of
we
studies.
like studies or not? All studies or no
I
studies?
like studies.
Oh, we do.
No, I like studies.
You do
but
like
you have
studies.
to. But you have to always look at bias. You know, the clinic in Finland was a transgender clinic that made the study. So they had different findings to many of the clinics in America that are saying there's a low detransition rate. But there are thousands of detransitioners out there. They're just not sharing their stories because of fear of being attacked. And, they get abuse every single day from trans activists. So there's thousands of kids out there there's 50,000 detrans.
So eventually they'll literally fall onto the claim that, like, the data is being manipulated by the scientists being, like, afraid of being attacked by gender activists. Like, they'll literally say that, like it's literally when you get to the point with a Nazi where they don't, like, they admit they don't care about studies anymore, and they just say all scientific institutions are infiltrated by the Jews. It's the same thing. Like, you start off a debate with a Nazi, and they're engaging with studies and whatnot, but then eventually they realize this is a losing argument, and they just say, fuck it, all the studies, all of the scientific organizations are corrupted and controlled by Jews. You can't trust any of them. It's literally that. But for studies and research to do with trans people, because none of it agrees with anything they say.
Transitioners on a Reddit subreddit forum speaking about detransition, but they're scared to come out and talk about it because they're going to get attacked. So there's a lot of people hiding.
You seem to be in denial, Ollie, that the vast, vast majority of these people, let's say there's a bias. Let's say instead of 1%, it's 10% regret it. And that's a huge deviation. So I'm giving you a lot of doubt here. If 10% only regret it, do you think that on whole, of the 90% who don't regret it and who have what they consider life-changing healthcare, why would you seek to deny them life-changing healthcare? When they,
Ethan,
they say this saved my life.
Well, Ethan, children can't get tattoos. Children can't buy cigarettes or buy alcohol. So how on earth?
Okay, tattoos, cigarettes, and alcohol are not life-saving medical procedures that have been unanimously demonstrated by studies that you now claim to love after saying you don't trust. To be like the unanimous solution to the depression, suicidal ideation, and unhappiness of gender dysphoric youth. So it literally, they don't care about the truth. They don't care about facts. It's just the only ends they're trying to reach is convincing as many people as possible that trans people should be banned from accessing the care that would save their lives. Because they want to maximize the amount of dead trans people, and the best way to do that is to ban access to their care. Kids can get tattoos with the parents' permission. Yeah, that is true. Like, I think once you're 16, at least in Florida, you could get a tattoo with parents' permission. I had, like, classmates when I was 16 that had tattoos that, like, and I asked them, like, did you get that, like, from a friend? Is that, like, a prison tattoo? And they'd be like, no, my mom took me to get it. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess you can get a tattoo if you're 16 and you get parent permission.
Can they consent to doing something they don't even understand about? We have to look at many of these kids. They don't understand. They don't think about the future. Like, if a kid changes their body to have gender reassignment surgery or take hormones, they might not be able to have a baby when they're older. They don't think about those things because they're kids. So the issue is just, we shouldn't be doing this to kids. It should happen, as an adult, they can make informed consent. But even with some of the parents agreeing
Ollie,
to it.
Do you know how many kids between the age of 6 and 17 went through irreversible surgery in the United States?
I know the number rises every year. Now it will be several thousand.
So the number of children between 6 and 17 who went through irreversible surgery.
I'm more curious about the number of children between 6 and, like, I'd say, like, 12 or 13. Like 12. 6 to 12 that went through irreversible gender-affirming care. Because I'm willing to bet the number is, like, really low. Because if we're measuring 6 to 16 and we're talking irreversible gender-affirming care, it's like 15 or 16 when, like, trans dudes at the earliest may be able to get a mastectomy, like top surgery. And that's irreversible. I mean, technically it's reversible. Like, if you could get breast implants, but, like, and I guess you could take, estrogen I don't even know what you could do, but, like, regardless, that would be considered irreversible, I imagine. But, like, you have to be 15 or 16 to get that. So, like, if you're going from 6 to 16, that's a very broad range. And, like, I would argue that being 15 or 16 and getting top surgery is fine. I think 15 or 16-year-old trans dudes or whatever, I think they are old enough, smart enough, mature enough to be able to decide whether or not top surgery is right for them. As far as like going below the age of like 12, though, there's no way there is a significant or even like notable amount of children below the age of 12 going through irreversible gender affirming care. I would be curious at how low the number is there, because the narrative the right pushes is that it's like that age range of kids is getting irreversible transitioning procedures done on them.
In the United States, what was the...
as for like infertility issues, if you're worried about your fertility, you can get your sperm or eggs frozen and preserved and have them used when you want to have children in the future. So like if you're worried about not being able to have kids and like you want to transition and that's like you need to, but you're worried about having kids, you can still have your own. Genetically, they're still your own kids with that solution. So like that narrative is also bullshit.
The years on that one?
It's 3 years, 2019 through 2021.
So this is the most comprehensive data we have, and this comes straight from the government stats. It was 250 per year. Does that seem significant to you?
That's completely incorrect, because there's a clinic in Oregon. It's in the thousands now. There's a clinic in Oregon that's done at least
the thousands. Is that significant? 1,000? I mean, we have 50 million children in the United States. Do you think 1,000 is statistically significant?
There's thousands, and this study probably only takes into account people on Medicaid or Medicare. There are also the parents and patients that pay out of pocket. So
even if
I think
the best argument here, and I don't know if it would be best with Ollie because Ollie's British, but with like an American conservative, the best argument from here is, okay, if 1,000 kids who have gotten like irreversible gender affirming care, that the vast majority of them, if any, don't regret, if that's a problem to you, how do you feel about banning guns? Even though I'm not in favor of banning guns, it's still a great place to call out conservative hypocrisy. Guns are the #1 cause of death of children in America. I unironically didn't know this stat until recently, and I had to like quadruple check it before I believed it. But it's true. In America, the #1 cause of death of children is guns. The #1 cause of child death in this country is guns. So if conservatives are losing their mind over like 1,000 trans kids around the world, how do they feel about the fact that guns are the #1 cause of death in this country of children? The fact is they will find some way to argue around it. And it will not make them look good, most likely, if you go about it the right way. If, like, with an American conservative, that is what I would have argued. And if they try to say, oh, you're anti-gun, oh, but gun right, I'd be like, no, I'm pro-gun. I'm asking why you're a hypocrite on this issue. You don't have to be anti-gun to make this argument.
Let's say it's thousands. Is this significantly significant when we have 51 million children in the United States between ages 6 and 17?
It's significant even because it's growing every day. If you look at any chart or graph of kids being medically transitioned, it's now in the tens of thousands across the US. California has thousands alone. Florida, before Governor DeSantis banned, there's a clinic, Dr. Gallagher, who performs at least five surgeries on minors every month. So, that's just one clinic.
Can you cite those numbers? Is it possible to get a reference?
Dr. Gallagher is a clinic in...
It's youth up to 17 is the count, and it's skewed mostly by gang violence. Okay. Goku's hair. Did you just imply that 17-year-olds who are victims of gang violence don't matter in a stat measuring kids dying because of gun violence? Is that what you just implied? Because I would say a 17-year-old who died by gun because they were a victim of gang violence is also like a valid inclusion in a stat that measures deaths of kids by gun in America. I think that's pretty valid to include. I'm implying you're painting an incomplete picture. What incomplete picture is that, Goku's hair? It sounds to me like when you hear that stat, you imagine like little like 8-year-old white kids in the suburbs are like getting shot or killed in school shootings, and then you found out, oh, It's because of gang violence, and 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds are the victims in a lot of that are pushing a lot of that stat in that direction. Ah, well, they don't matter as much. Like that's unironically what your thought process was. Christ. Yeah, so like that's a little bit of like an idea of the kind of argument conservatives will make. They'll find like the most demonic ways to try to argue around that hypocrisy because it is very blatant.
Florida, and she operates on minors.
Okay. And so what is wrong with the number going up? I mean, let's say it goes up from 1,000 to 2,000 in the whole United States. I mean, so obviously one would assume, right, Ollie, as people become more educated and aware of transgenderism, and we've seen the same thing with homosexuality, which of course you are a member of the LGBT community, you know, in the 50s as being gay became more acceptable. You saw the numbers significantly rising during that time. I'm sure you know that, right?
Yeah, of course, because it became more acceptable.
What is the difference between the hysteria that took place then about there was, you know, on the right that they're turning our kids gay? That turned out not to be true. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. So hold on to that. So now.
Oh no, Ollie can't bite that bullet either with their audience. Like I said, if you clip out Ollie London admitting to being gay and timestamp this and just like spam it below every Ollie London tweet, Ollie London will lose like a noticeable amount of followers, and there will be a noticeable amount of like people saying, "What the fuck? Ollie London's gay?" Because the people that follow Ollie London believe that they're like this like mutilated, pathetic novelty as that acts as like an example of like what will happen if the trans agenda gets you. Like that is all Ollie London is to these people. That is the entire grift, right? Once that narrative, that idea gets shattered, I don't know how many of these people are going to tolerate Ollie London. Like these people hardly tolerate any gay people as it is. You have to really push and shill their agenda to be an acceptable gay person. But like, ooh, I don't know. Yeah. Also, how many of these conservatives that follow Ollie London do you think don't even know Ollie London is legally married to a cardboard cutout of Jimin from BTS, the K-pop band, like literally legally married to a cardboard cutout of Jimin in Las Vegas? How many conservatives do you think don't even know about that? And when they found out, they'd be like, "What the fuck, Ollie?" and unfollow. Like the amount of skeletons in Ollie's closet, it's like a fucking dam ready to burst. When Ollie London falls off, it is going to be calamitous. Do I look like I know what a K-pop is?
Now today, we see the same graph going up of trans kids getting surgery or gender-affirming care or whatever. So why is it that you today can draw a conclusion that was the same conclusion in the 50s that you disagree with, that trans kids are being influenced societal to become trans? It seems to be a glaring contradiction in logic.
History just keeps repeating itself over and over again.
It's not just random based on the fact that it's easier for people to come out these days or identify in different ways. It is a concerted push, Ethan. So there's now
That's what
over
they said
60
about gay people.
Ethan, there's now over 60 pediatric gender clinics that have opened within the last 15 years across the US. They weren't there before, so they are profiting from this. They're opening clinics because they know they can profit. So when they push, through popular culture, or
well, they're opening clinics because there's a lot of trans people, and right now there's not enough. So this is just the left-handedness argument. Like there's the chart. There's the famous chart. Left-handedness chart. This is pretty common. You'll see this used on Twitter a lot in retorts to conservatives making this argument about like being trans or gender dysphoria being like a social contagion. You can see around the 1900s is when or sorry, not around the 1900s, around the like mid 1800s, they started punishing in schools, mostly like because a lot of like schools were Catholic or very religious, left-handedness. They saw it as like demonic or whatever. And so kids were actively punished and penalized for being left-handed and had to learn how to write with their right hand and be right-handed. And that stopped. I'm sure you could probably tell where in the timeline schools stopped punishing kids for being left-handed. And what happened when schools stopped literally punishing kids for being left-handed? The history of left-handedness, it went up like crazy. And there were always left-handed kids, by the way. It's not like they stopped punishing left-handedness, and all of a sudden left-handedness started like exploding out of nowhere. You can see there was always left-handed kids, and it was on a downfall as it was being punished. And then when it stopped being punished, and it levels out. Because the truth is, there's a roughly set amount of left-handed kids. It's not a social contagion. It's not a fad. People are just left-handed. People are just gay. People are just trans. This exact trend will exist with trans, gay people, every other like LGBT identity of that sort. You will see that exact same trend. We already have seen that exact same trend in some areas.
Or push transitioning via TikTok trends, they are profiting from that. So it benefits them if society and children are being confused and indoctrinated in schools or via social media, because they can get more patients through their door.
So that's good, but let's focus on this issue that I want to nail down. They said that gay kids were being influenced to be gay. You disagree with that now, and you're one of the people that says kids are being influenced to become trans, and it's the same curve. How do you?
Oh yeah, those of you guys that don't know, conservatives are like TikTok. Hating TikTok is like this really mixed bag sort of popular thing to do online. It's hard to explain. Essentially, a lot of Zoomers fucking hate TikTok, particularly like the edgy, more conservative-ish leaning crowd. The audience that the right most actively wants to indoctrinate really hate TikTok because they see it as cringe or whatever. And so Ollie London and a lot of these figures basically try to claim that transgenderism is a symptom of TikTok because they're trying to use the already existing ill will TikTok has as sort of like trying to carry over that ill will against TikTok over to trans people. Like, oh, you hate TikTok? Well, guess what? TikTok creates trans people. And then you kind of tie those things together, and all of a sudden, like, you know, you see those things as one and the same, or like part of the same sort of amorphous blob of wokeness.
Do you not? Why is that curve not just the result of it becoming more acceptable in society? Because it's the same curve, right? Same curve.
It's a huge curve, you know, and it's really in the last 5 years since TikTok came about. We're seeing so many. There's about 2.2 billion people.
What does it matter how they become aware of it? I'm telling you, it's the same curve.
What I'm trying to tell you is that there are influences now that didn't exist 10 years ago that are pushing kids.
Yeah,
so, for instance, TikTok, there's about 2.2.
So TikTok is turning people trans, where back in the 50s, people said it was like rock and roll music, it was movies, it was hippie movements. That wasn't accessible to the generation before them. I don't see the difference.
What I'm saying is that kids are being exposed to influences that they didn't have before.
Same
you know,
in the 50s.
kids are being Sorry?
The same in the 50s. The kids who were coming out as gay were also exposed to things that weren't accessible to generations before them.
Ethan's nailing Ollie on this.
Well, I don't agree with that. They didn't have phones back then. Kids are now being pushed trends, and the AI algorithm recognizes a kid's vulnerabilities.
Well,
push videos.
music, you know, popular music.
Music.
Pop music. Pop music was something that was rock and roll was something that was new back then. So
no, correct. And you could also argue that in the 80s, more people came out because you know, music like George Michael was you know, songs about freedom.
So
and
then,
stuff
why are
coming
you
out with.
concluding that TikTok is making people trans? I don't understand the logic. You just contradicted yourself.
No. What I'm saying is, in the last 5 years,
I am willing to be open to the idea that TikTok, because of its very large younger Gen Z follower base, is probably where a lot of young Gen Z Zoomers are being exposed to the idea of LGBT people and maybe discovering that they're LGBT. But like, that doesn't mean TikTok's turning them LGBT. It means that like TikTok is acting as a platform where they are learning about gay people existing and then realizing who they are because of that. It'd be no different if it was YouTube was where they, you know, found out gay people exist or whatever, right? Like, they're literally just mad that when kids find out gay people exist or trans people exist, they realize, wait, that's a thing you can be. And then if they feel like that could be what they are, they might end up being that. And when your goal is to basically like exterminate LGBT people, which is what the right wants to do. I don't know if it's what Ollie London wants to do, because Ollie London's a grifter, but like the right broadly, or not broadly, but the right in its most radical form right now wants to exterminate trans people. It's why they're really going after the kids, right? Because if you can make it so there essentially aren't any new trans people, you know, coming out and existing, then you can start working on, you know, exterminating the trans people that are out and existing.
Years, there is an increase in gender clinics opening because they are exploiting these children that are being pushed trans. You know, there's a lot of lobby groups, Ethan. The Human Rights Campaign is a massive lobby group. They're going around.
Oh, you were trans before TikTok.
I struggled with gender dysphoria for all of my life.
TikTok.
Correct, but yes, but my identity struggles came about because I was using social media too much. And
but Ollie, you were born in 1990. You're not that much younger than me. When I grew up, there was no social media. I don't believe you probably had social media until you were in your 20s, well into your 20s.
Yeah, correct. And the reason I struggled with my identity was because of bullying in childhood. But then I only transitioned as an adult.
But bullying in childhood, we established from the report that you told me to read that bullying in childhood results in less people transitioning.
Sorry, say it again.
The study you sent me about bullying, the conclusion was that bullying results in less people transitioning. So you says it's a result of social media. Well, you didn't have social media. Then you says it was a result of bullying. But this study you told me to read says bullying reduces the amount of people who transition. So how is it that you were trans before, outside of all these influences that are turning people trans?
Well, firstly, I'm an individual, so I'm one person. So my experience is not reflective of every single person that becomes trans out there. But
and yet this person uses nothing but anecdotes to push their agenda. Yes, my experience is nothing like anybody else. Oh, but here's a bunch of different anecdotes of other people's experiences that I'm using to apply to very broad issues and to basically every trans person. Like it's so fucking transparent, dude.
The thing is, I became trans as an adult because I really struggled with my identity throughout my whole life. And yes, I did get bullying. Every case is different as well. Some people are bullied because of their gender identity. Some people are not. So every single case is different. But the reason I became trans was, you follow my journey, the Korean stuff. That was me trying to find myself and trying to, fit in because I hated the way I looked.
If your journey is a personal one, which I totally understand, then what gives you the right to project your personal experience onto others?
There you go.
Well, I speak to detransitioners every day. I speak to parents. I speak to women.
So that assumes a bias, Ollie. You're talking all day to detransitioners. We've also established, because we, I think, like studies, or I don't know if we decided, I think you said you like studies, because 27 of them made a consensus that 99% of people that transition don't regret it. So if you spend all day talking to the 1% that do regret it, don't you believe that underlies a bias?
Well, no, I don't believe it because I talk to all sorts of people. I talk to parents that have trans kids and, they're trying to navigate through that. And the general consensus with everyone I speak to, because I'm not right wing or left wing. I'm just very much in the center. I'm just trying to.
Remember, the right really loves focusing on parents of trans kids, not parents of trans kids who are supportive of their trans kids. Those are groomers. Those are monsters. They should have their kids taken away from them. No, they love talking about the plight of the parents of trans kids. And those parents are transphobic and don't want their kids to be trans, right? Like, oh my God, look at these poor parents and how they have to navigate this difficult situation. And then, like, there's a parent who's, like, pro-trans and very happy with their trans kid. And they're both, like, parent and kid, both very happy, love each other, accepting relationship and everything. Like, take that kid away from her. Oh, that's some strong weed. There was still a little bit trapped in my lungs. It like came up with that yelling. Like they'll literally advocate for like trans accepting parents to have their trans kids taken from them. And yet they talk so much about the plight of transphobic parents and their trans kids and how difficult it is for the parents.
Help people using my platform to try and help people. The general consensus is we shouldn't be doing this to kids, and there generally is a concerted push over the last 5 years to medically transition children. If kids want to experiment, if a girl wants to be a tomboy, nobody has a problem with that. If they want to become trans as adults, that's on them. But the issue that I talk about every day, I talk with parents, I talk with all these detransitions, is when this happens to kids. That's the issue I'm speaking about.
Right,
it's not about people being trans.
Let me ask you another question, just to pivot a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'm one of the people that would say Ollie London is willing to do anything for attention. You have probably some kind of, I don't want to diagnose you, I'm not a psychiatrist, but there is some craving for attention, clearly, right? Good or bad. I mean, you said about like Korean, you said your pronouns were Korean, you said you were going to get your penis size reduced so that you could look more, you could be a more authentic Korean. I mean, these are not serious things. You seem to be a provocateur. Is it possible that you are participating in this right-wing grift because one, it's making you a lot of money, and two, it's getting you a lot of attention?
Is that possible
that you actually don't care and that your beliefs are empty? Is that possible?
No, absolutely not. So when I struggled with my identity for years, I generally was struggling and I was lashing out at bullies. And the more I would get bullied online by YouTubers and people on TikTok, the more I would act crazy because I was trying to feel validated and loved. And it was very unhealthy.
The conservative movement has offered you quite an open hand. They're very glad to be using you as a mouthpiece against trans people. So it must feel good to be being accepted from somebody, even if it is at the detriment of many people who are at risk, trans people. It must feel nice to have people supporting you.
No, it's nothing to do with that at all. I could have easily continued to do K-pop. I could have focused on TikTok, which, I used to really enjoy doing TikTok. I'm not the best singer. I like to make fun, entertaining videos. I could have stuck with that. In actual fact, when I detransitioned, I lost so many brand deals. I lost all my invites to New York Fashion Week. I was front row.
Yeah, but now you're on Tucker Carlson. I mean, that's the biggest show in the world, or it was. Rest in peace to the GOAT.
Yeah, he was the original goat. But no, it's nothing to do with that. No.
So you say it's not possible that you are just doing this for attention. If we go back, here's a
Yes, centrist who's a fan of a white nationalist moment.
recording of you saying that you're using the BLM movement for attention and for cameos. Here, listen.
So it's basically every time I do a music video, it's like, if it's £1 million, it's £1,000. So if I just keep releasing music videos, that's like enough. And then also because I've been a lot on Twitter, there's been so many people talking about me on Twitter because I'm supporting the Black Lives Matter and protests and stuff. So I had 200,000 views on the video. So because of that as well, I'm getting a lot of requests. So it's just, I'm just staying relevant in the news, on TV and stuff, because, the more exposure I have, if I'm trending on Twitter.
Of course there's literally clips of Ollie London admitting to being a grifter. Of course there are.
Whatever on TV, then the more cameos I get. So yeah, just.
So here you say you're supporting BLM to stay relevant and because it gets you more cameos. Have you been getting more cameos since you went right wing?
Well, firstly, that audio was from a number of years ago. It was edited deceptively by somebody that was completely uncredible.
Was it?
And just basically desperate for attention.
It's your voice, correct?
It's my voice, but it was edited deceptively to try and make me.
It didn't sound like it.
So what's the deception?
So I'm not doing any of this. What I'm doing now is to try and help people. Previously, even I'll admit it. Oh.
How is it deceptively edited? You see, what I'm doing is trying to help people. Oh, pivot. The hard fucking pivot. Just pretending like you didn't even hear the question kind of pivot. Oof. That is a hard pivot. Oh my god, that how there's a really hard a really narrow curve on the road, and you might have your back tire go over it when driving on accident because it's such a tight turn. That is how sharp of a pivot that was. Whew.
Because it gets you more cameos. Have you been getting more cameos since you went right wing?
Well, firstly, that audio was from a number of years ago. It was edited deceptively by somebody that was completely uncredible and just basically desperate for attention.
It's your voice, correct?
It's my voice, but it was edited deceptively to try and make me look bad.
So what's the deception?
So I'm not doing any of this. What I'm doing now is to try and help people. Previously, even I'll admit it, previously I had some very unhealthy behavior.
Deceptive. I'm open to hearing you out. How is it deceptive?
I'm explaining. So, previously I had unhealthy behavior where I was generally thinking, oh, how many likes can I get? How many views can I get? Because I was in a really crazy mental health place. And, the more surgery I would get, I would feel worse about myself. So I would try and be validated by online views and things. But in fact,
unlike
talking
now.
to BLM, actually, no, I'm not doing it now. If I wanted to, Ethan, if I wanted to. No, if I wanted to.
Okay. We're roughly halfway through this. I don't think we can finish this whole thing, which is honestly fine by me because I want to watch the rest off stream. But holy crap, this is good. Definitely go watch the full thing on Ethan's channel if you haven't already. There will be a link to this video pinned in the comments down below. I wanted to show you guys something as the closer of this segment. No watch it all, Zan. We have been doing this for 2.5 hours. I got other segments I have to do tonight. It's already 12 p.m. for me. I have to get to bed soon. I feel like they might avoid it because the right, for what's best for the right is to avoid even acknowledging their L's and just trying to stick to what will give them dubs. It's what the left has always been bad at, is ignoring topics that the left just can't take a dub on. With the Hogwarts Legacy thing, right? The left just couldn't leave that alone. They couldn't just let go, and it ended up really hurting the perception of the left and the trans community broadly online. I feel like the right also has that problem, but less so than the left. And the thing that always kind of tends to put the left ahead of the right in this respect is that the right shows its ass in more clearly horrific ways, right? When the left does things that make it look bad, it's cringy or weird. But when the right does things that make it look bad, it's yes, white nationalist shooter murders 50 people and then writes a manifesto where they describe their radicalization through conservative propaganda content and how they got to where they are, to literally murdering people for their ideology. It's just eventually one side looks worse than the other, right? And it's always going to end up being the right in the long term.